To order this meeting Monday, July 24, 2023, the regular public meeting of the Ramapo Indian Hills Regional High School District Board of Education. Ms. Demetrio?
Mr. Bogdansky.
Here.
Mr. DeLate.
Here.
Ms. Amelo.
Here.
Ms. King.
Here.
Ms. Koulikortis. Ms. Koulikortis.
Looks like we lost her. Did we lose her? I think we lost her.
We'll come back to her. Maybe tech support can assist Ms. Koulikortis.
Dr. Lorenz.
Here.
Ms. Mariani. Here. Ms. Sanch.
Here.
Ms. Sullivan.
Here.
George.
Dr. Dionisi, are you able to communicate to tech support to see if they can have Ms. Koulikortis? Oh, here they are. Just one moment, please.
Well, she fell asleep. Maybe she hit the snooze button.
I know this one, the June one was 33 and change. By the time we get there, I should be able to check to see. I was having a problem logging in because I was getting up for that.
Whose Wi-Fi is down? Hers? Okay. 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 So Ms. Koulikortis had planned on attending the meeting pursuant to policy 155.01, and unfortunately she appears to have lost her internet coverage at her location, so we will see if she's able to join us, and at that time Ms. Demetrio will record in the minutes the time that she joins the meeting. Is that okay with you, Ms. Zeno? Thank you. All right, so I think the next thing is we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, or do you want to do the board president's announcement first? So Ms. Zeno, welcome.
Yes. Thank
This
you.
is your first board president's announcement of the notice for the public meetings calling.
Yeah. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the rights of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act and the business administrator, board secretary has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in accordance with NJSA 10:4-8B and the guidance from the New Jersey Department of Community Affairs, Division of Local Government Services. In addition, please be aware that employees of the school district retain the right of privacy and shall retain all rights regarding defamation and slander according to the laws of New Jersey. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by members of the public, and in order to protect the privacy rights of employees in the district, the board shall not respond to statements made by the public or about district employees.
Thank you so much. Now we are up to the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand and join me?
They moved it?
Yeah, well, a little bit. No, it's okay. It's fine. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for you. Okay, that leads to our board president's report. I didn't get a chance to discuss with Dr. Dionisio how he wanted to handle a proposed addendum. Do you want to, that did or did not go up on the website? It is, okay. And was it handed out at the table at the entrance, or?
Yes.
Okay. So do I need to make a motion then to add this to the agenda before we actually vote? Would you like to do it that way? Or since it's been noticed, well, actually, I don't know that it's necessary, actually. Yeah, I'm not sure it's necessary. Let me see what Ms. Eno thinks.
I don't think we've done a motion in the past, but I can't remember.
It's probably not necessary.
I don't think it's necessary.
Yes.
We typically have done this in the past. It's up on the website.
Yeah,
We communicated to the committees and to the board earlier today. It's up on the district website, and it's included
Yes.
at the table, so I think it's fine.
I agree.
You could do it as a consent agenda if the
I
board
will.
agrees later.
Okay. And the only time I think we would do it by motion is if you were walking in with it and it wasn't so necessarily posted or handed out or transmitted to the board members ahead of the meeting. Okay, so then I won't address that in my board president's report. So let's get to it. Welcome to our July 24, 2023 board meeting. Although we only have one board meeting in July, rest assured the board and administration are working hard on a number of items to benefit our students, faculty, staff, and administration. We are excited to continue to work on finishing the agreements memorialization for the new bargaining agreement with the Ramapo Indian Hills Regional High School Education Association. Memorandum of agreement was approved at our last board meeting. The agreement is for 1 year, and later on in this year, 2023, the board will likely begin discussions to negotiate the successor contract to commence 1 year after the agreement expires, June of 2024. This process starts in December. We are also working on renewing our supervisor's contract. There are several separate bargaining units in our district, and they have separate agreements. Ms. Emilo will likely report as to this as well in her negotiations update. Thank you to the committee and the negotiation team for the RIHEA and to our superintendent for the work in reaching this important milestone. I also want to mention the administration is working on drafting revisions to our curriculum to be presented to the board for approval in late August, which is our next board meeting. According to our bylaws, constituents can contribute to the thoughts and ideas to any action the board is considering, and I believe Mr. Bodansky will be describing more in his committee report as to how both the board and the public will be included in this process. Please keep in mind the board has a group email and individual email addresses listed on our website, as does the administration. Our pictures were actually just updated on the board page as well. There are a number of construction projects being worked on that will also likely be described in the Facilities and Finance Committee's update. The chair of that committee is Mariana Emilo. Most of the projects were approved last year by last year's board. The energy savings improvement plans construction continues, albeit you'll hear later on tonight with a redesign on the board agenda for approval of solar panels / roof repairs. Construction on the tennis courts resurfacing is underway. It is my understanding the vast majority of LED lighting changes and replacements have been made in our school's lighting system. There will be more detail from Ms. Emilo as chair of the Facilities and Finance Committee. I also wanted to mention we have enjoyed starting to work with Dora Zeno. She is our new interim business administrator, replacing Mr. Lamb, who resigned last month, and she will be here likely for 1 year while we will be searching for a permanent business administrator. This is her first board meeting, so welcome. The Communications Committee will also be providing a report on its progress in working collaboratively together with the committee. Discovered that it might be the 60th anniversary of Indian Hills next year, and Ramapo High School celebrates their 70th anniversary in 2026. Congratulations to our schools. I'm looking forward to celebrating. Thank you to Ms. Mariani for her work in chairing the Arts, Athletics, Extracurriculars, and Communications Committee. I would also like to thank Ms. Ansch in connection with her Policy Committee Chair position. Drafting and changing policies is not an easy task. Ms. Ansch is also our Board Vice President and is always prepared to chair a meeting in the event that I'm absent or taken away from my duties. Ms. Anch is a strong representative from Franklin Lakes and has been working for a number of years, attending board meetings and about educating herself about our school's operations. Thank you to our superintendent and administration for their work this summer. I would like to share Dr. Dionisio will be starting in September his second full academic year with the district. And congratulations, looking forward to that. And I finally hope our students and staff and faculty are enjoying their summer, resting, relaxing, and hopefully relishing this special time that they have in their lives. Thank you so much. Okay, that leads to our superintendent's report. Dr. Dionisio?
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone has been able to enjoy some relaxation thus far this summer. In school, each summer provides opportunities for not only to recharge the batteries, but also to accomplish a great deal of work over the summer and to allow ourselves to reset with New Year's resolutions as we prepare to begin a new school year. This summer is no different. First and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our exceptional teachers and staff who have dedicated their time to hosting our summer learning academies. It has truly been remarkable. These academies have been thriving with the voluntary participation of over 226 Ramapo Indian Hills students who are voluntarily participating in this summer's program. Many of our students are participating in more than one session. In fact, they are engaging in interesting subjects in a total of 363 participants across the district in subject areas that foster enrichment and intellectual growth. It fills us with immense pride to witness the enthusiasm of all of our students. So we'd like to congratulate them, thank them, and give them a warm round of applause for all of their efforts over the summer. I am equally grateful to our devoted faculty and staff who have been wholeheartedly working on curriculum revisions this past summer. Their efforts are laying the groundwork for a better and more empowering learning experience for all of our students, and we thank you. Very special kudos to our dedicated custodial and maintenance staff for their outstanding efforts over the summer in working to create a conducive learning environment. Their meticulous work in supporting our classrooms and enhancing our spaces for teaching and learning is truly commendable. And in that same vein, I'm also thrilled to share the remarkable progress that our district has embarked upon this past summer with our construction projects. The renovations to our tennis courts, athletic field lighting, restrooms, refrigerator, freezer areas in our cafeterias for renovation, and all of our ESIP projects are well underway and making excellent progress. These improvements in such a short amount of time are setting the stage for a more vibrant and welcoming campus for our students, for our staff, and for our learning community. Tonight, we also have several resolutions on the agenda for board approval, which highlight our unwavering commitment to prioritize mental health and social-emotional well-being of our students. As we all know, the old adage of Maslow before Bloom aptly captures the significance of addressing our students' fundamental needs, which is essential for their learning and growth in the classroom. On a bittersweet note this evening, we have some resignations on the board agenda to acknowledge. We extend our heartfelt gratitude on resolutions P14, P15, and P16. Nick Amaral, our district staff development coordinator, Sarah Hawkins, Indian Hills High School school psychologist, and Karen Laria, Indian Hills High School special education. Their dedication and contribution to our students, our staff, and the Ramapo Indian Hills learning community have been invaluable. We wish them all the best as they embark on new adventures in their professional journeys. As I conclude my superintendent report for this evening, I hope everyone makes the most of the remaining summer days as we come to the midpoint in the summer, and take the time to rejuvenate, reflect, and prepare for the excitement that awaits us in the coming school year. Momentarily, I will turn the program over to Ms. Fisher, who's now Ms. McDermott. Congratulations. And who's our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Articulation. And she will be presenting this evening the New Jersey Grade graduation proficiency assessment presentation to the board and to the public. But before I get there, I would like to officially welcome our interim business administrator and board secretary, who doesn't like the attention, but I'm going to give her some. We're extremely fortunate to have Ms. Zeno, who's joined us, and it has been a pleasure in working with her in her capacity. We're fortunate to have her expertise and look forward to working with her this year. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to her for her business administrator report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Dionisio. I hope I meet the board superintendents and the public's expectations because I don't want to let you down. Anyway, on the business administrator's report, we're starting the 4th week of July, and it's certainly been a busy month, as Ms. Sullivan said earlier. Buildings are being readied for the school opening in September. Progress is being made on many construction projects. But of special note, some of the items that are on your agenda I'd like to highlight. With all of the construction projects that are underway, there was a need to have one individual oversee the construction coordination. Superintendent is recommending that the district contract with the architect to perform construction administration services. That's item OP5, operations. Operations item 6, you may recall from the June board meeting that the roof bids being funded from the ESIP project came in too high. The scope of the work was revamped. The roof repairs and surface will have a smaller footprint, but the roof itself will still have a 15-year warranty. The rebid came in at budget, and thus the architect and superintendent are recommending that the bid be awarded. On item operation 7, we seek permission to issue a bid to attract vendors to rent space in proximity to the Indian Hills High School cell tower. A similar bid was approved by this board and awarded, and the district generated over $30,000 in annual income from that. So that's a good move in the right direction. Ms. Sullivan referred to the lighting upgrades earlier. They're well underway. They're almost complete in this building, and the labor crew has moved over to Ramapo. They're installing fixtures there. Towards the end of the installation process at both campuses, which is why we have poor lighting here, they will rent a forklift so that they can reach up there in both buildings and do that final installation at the same time. So that will be high areas like this, the stairwell in this building. As soon as we walked in there, I saw that it was dark. There's a F8, there's an ESIP payment request on tonight's agenda to authorize payment to DCO so that the lighting subcontractor, Green Tech, and weatherization vendors can be paid. These payments are made from a separate bank account which was established when the Energy Savings Improvement Program was funded. And then on your agenda, item OP8, and I know I went out of sequence, but it relates to the insurance rates charged to the district for each of the coverages as listed on the agenda. The district is in the second year of a 3-year insurance pool. And we participate in what's called the NSBIC, that's the Northeastern School Board's Insurance Group. It's a public entity risk-sharing pool in which school districts have joined together to administer a program of self-funding with reinsurance layers to provide us extra protection. Participation in this pool is advantageous in many respects, not the least of which if the premium pool builds up over a certain threshold, the district receives a rebate. So every so often you'll get a $50,000 or $60,000 check that's put back into your funds. OP number 3 refers to the renewal of an annual shared services agreement with Franklin Lakes so that we provide meals, or that Aramark provides meals to students who meet eligibility requirements. And then on the financial end of the spectrum, in preparation for the annual audit, the business office is in the process of closing out the 22-23 school year and fiscal year, and purchasing has commenced for the 23-24 school year. I'd like to end with saying that every single person I've encountered has been very welcoming and eager to help, and it makes me very grateful to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Zeno. Ms. Sullivan, at this time, if there's nothing further, I'd like to ask the board to just join us in the audience, and we'll turn it over to Ms. McDermott.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Will Ms. Colacortis Has anybody heard from her? Is she going to be able to join? Okay, I just wondered if she was going to join in the middle of the PowerPoint and wanted to be able to. Okay, it's no worries. Thank you.
Unlike last year, this year's administration of the NJGPA is utilized as the first graduation pathway for this senior class. If a student did not meet the approved cut scores for one component of the assessment, they have the opportunity to receive additional supports and may take the following steps. They could possibly retake the NJGPA during the fall administration, which we'll give here at school. And the second pathway, if they don't make the cut score again, is to take alternative substitute competency tests. Some of those include the SAT, the PSAT, the ACT, as well as the AccuPlacer. And if a student doesn't make the cut scores for those individual assessments, then we could do the third pathway, which is a portfolio, and we really work on the skill development of both ELA and math, or one or the other subjects. Just traditionally here in Ramapo Indian Hills, most of our students are able to make it for the first pathway, the retest on the NJGPA, or the second pathway. And if the portfolio is required, we'll work individually with those students to make sure that they get across the finish line for that capacity. For this administration's participation rates, we had 96% of our students participate in both the ELA and math assessment. These high rates of participation are thanks to our administration and the support that we have from our community. Our administration works really hard to coordinate the dates, communicate them, as well as make sure that the students participate in the makeup assessments if needed. When we look at the results that we have compared to the state, we can see that 77% of our students are considered graduation ready for math, and 91.9% of our students are considered graduation ready in ELA. This is both compared to the state average, which we are higher than in both. As we move away from comparing ourselves to the state average and look at the schools individually, you can see that both of our schools are really aligned in the students' readiness for both ELA and math, with only about a 3% difference between the schools. For all of the state testing data, we have specific parameters around mandated reporting, especially for subgroups. So for accurate reporting, the state establishes a N number, and the N number for state testing is 10. So we need to have 10 students a part of a subgroup in order to report, so that way we don't provide any individual or a possibility for us to know who individual students are and how they performed. So you'll see on the slide when it comes up all the data, there are some subgroups that we would normally report if we had more students a part of those. So you'll see our English language learners aren't represented, migrant students are not represented, as well as some races are not represented on our particular data. So for the math data in particular, again, the district average for math was at 77% of our students were graduation ready. But when we analyze the data and look specifically at subgroups, we can see that our Hispanic students, students that are economically disadvantaged, and students with an IEP are below that 77% average for the district. The same for ELA, our district average was 91.9%, and those similar subgroups of our Hispanic students, our students that are economically disadvantaged, and students with an IEP are below that average. So some of the interventions that we've put into place in order to address some of these gaps, as well as the overall performance of our student population on these assessments, have been made throughout the year, and then some more immediate after these results. So two things that we did during the program of studies revision in December, and then it finally approved in January, was to change the structure of the Algebra 1 CP course. It used to be 7.5 credits. We moved it to be a 5-credit class and a separate 2.5 credit class. And that 2.5 credit class is considered a lab that's really going to provide differentiated support in a small group setting. We're really trying to keep the number of students in that class at 10 or under, so there really is that opportunity for personalized instruction and meeting the students where their needs are and closing some of those gaps that they might have. Also, we created ASIP, which is the Academic Skills Improvement Program, which is a course that's designed to support students that are not on track for graduation, whether that be from this particular assessment of the NJGPA or as students are moving through the grades with the performance on NJSLA. The idea of that course is to really personalize instruction and help students meet their graduation requirement through one of the pathways that I listed earlier. There's the 3 original ones. We're also currently exploring online math programs to allow us to provide feedback, targeted practice, and track learning to identify areas of individual growth. One of these programs does align with some of the textbooks that we're looking at, especially the Algebra 1 course that is in the proposal for tonight's textbooks. The district is also moving to an in-class resource model, which we really hope will help support the math instruction between the general education teacher, who is a math specialist, as well as the special ed teacher, who is an expert in helping our students with their accommodations and modifications, and really building some more cohesion between those departments so that the instruction is thorough as well as cohesive for the students. We'll also continue to review the types of questions and evidence statements. The data that they do eventually provide us is really drilled down, so we know exactly what standards our students are needing a little bit more support around or where we're doing really well. So that really gives us some wonderful talking points for our department meetings and for that collaboration. We'll also continue to offer academic support after school this coming year, especially in these targeted areas, as well as as Dr. Denisio said, we do have a lot of students participating in the summer learning academies to participate in the Algebra 1 boot camp, the pre-algebra boot camp, to kind of really reinforce those skills for students. The other major piece is we triangulated the data from the NJGPA as well as the NJSLA, the PSAT, and other student learning data that we have to really craft this year's professional development goals that really going to guide instruction and prepare our students for higher achievement on some of these assessments in the future. So we're trying to look at this as a whole picture then. Some of our notable achievements. We're really excited that both schools significantly surpassed the state in both ELA and math results, and that they're also aligned in their graduation readiness. And we're also pleased to see that the district's results improved from the 2022 administration of the NJGPA. So we're seeing that forward progress. And that's it.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you, Dr. Nicio. Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a wonderful presentation. I know that you know that we have work to do with our students, and I know that the students are eager to do better, and the teachers are eager to help them do better. I've heard a lot of feedback from parents in regards to the after-school program that will that continue running? Because I've just heard amazing feedback from parents about how their kids, like teachers were logging in via Zoom to help tutor them, and it was just a wonderful program.
So that will continue this year, and we're really excited about it. I think that, one, it offers students to connect with teachers that might teach differently than the teacher they have in the classroom, but also not all of our students are able to stay right after school. So there's flexibility for them to meet online later on the weekends, and the teachers then have the flexibility as well to kind of schedule things when they, it's best for the teacher and the students. So it's been a really positive program, I agree, and we're happy to continue it.
Ms. McDermott, can you just, for the members of the public who are unaware, speak a little bit about what that after-school assistance program is and how that support is provided for our students?
Absolutely. So it's really student-driven, which is, I think, the best part. We have a number of teachers that sign up for support in our key content areas. So Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, English 9, English 10, English 11, science classes that we have. So teachers are able to show what availability they have during the week, and then students can then create appointments with them virtually on their calendars, and they can say, oh, I'm gonna be here from 7 to 7:30 in the morning, and a student arrives to school a little early and meets with the teacher in person. The teacher can stay after from 3:15 onwards with a student, or some of the teachers say, I'm available at 7 o'clock at night. So then they create a Zoom, and the student and the teacher meet up, and the student can ask their questions, review for assessments, clarify things for homework, and we ask the student to sign up one day ahead of time. And so far we've had a lot of participation, a lot of positive feedback. So we'll continue that this year once we put out, you can kind of see this past year's schedule to get an idea of what it looks like right online, but we'll put out to our teachers again, and our students will be able to access that.
Thank you very much. First, I want to say I'm very proud that I chair the Education and Personnel Committee. I want to thank you for all your hard work, your diligence. You probably have the toughest job out of everyone.
I don't know about that.
I think you do. We have a tough crowd and a very responsive community.
Yes.
So with that said, I'd like to ask you a question that doesn't necessarily pertain to grades.
Okay.
And I think we had a very spirited conversation in committee. And we talked about certain words that people in the community become very concerned about: inclusion, equity, fair or safe environments.
Yep. Individualism.
And a lot of people reach out to me with concern that this is code names or words for DEI or CRT, or that we're teaching the 1619 project. And I know this doesn't have to do about grades, but I think your response in committee was so compelling that I think it's very worthy for you to share that with the community.
Absolutely. I don't think it's disconnected from this, though, because I do think that the professional development goals is really where that conversation spurred, and the goals are really driven by the data that we see in front of us. So when I look at this data, we do have a goal around math specifically for next year, and really looking at the concepts of math. We have a goal around literacy. All of it is driven by the data that we've seen. And one of the other goals was around inclusive educational environments. And that's a real important goal for us, because one of the things that we talked about, like words like inclusion or individualism that are written in there, are really driven by the individual needs that our students are showing us. So when we talk about inclusion, we're really talking about this co-teaching model that we're bringing into the district, where we have a general education teacher and a special education teacher collaboratively planning for our students, executing the lessons for our students, assessing them, giving them feedback, and we are having more students a part of the general education setting, which is exactly what we want and what we're legally responsible to do. So when we talk about including them, we really want those students who may have been in a more restrictive environment to feel like they're welcome in there and supported in that environment. When we're talking about individualism in the classroom, just like you would want for your student, hey, Johnny's really struggling on X or Elizabeth's really struggling on Y, and the teacher noticing that, teaching into those deficits and building that student up. Other things that we want to showcase is that our students all do things at different paces and have different skill sets, and celebrating some of those differences. We have a growing English language learner population, even though we can't report out on them because they're dispersed between the grades. It's growing in numbers, and we really want to make sure those students who are part of the general education setting feel included and feel that we're noticing them and trying to support them to the best of our ability so that they're also successful and can continue learning a new language in a new environment and a new home. So those are the major pieces. I think the social emotional component we talked about a lot there too, and a lot of that is very broad, and you're like, what are we actually teaching when we're talking about that? And I mentioned that we really focus on Castle's work. So when a student is coming into a general education setting, they might have been supported in a much smaller environment, but we're really helping them figure out what are your self-regulation skills? How do you know how to refocus? Or how do you work on those relationship skills with your teacher to make sure that you feel confident in asking a question or telling them that I'm not really there, I don't really know what's going on, I need further support, right? Those are all things that we still need to coach our students on, even though they're 9th through 12th graders. And we also need to make sure that everyone in the classroom is supporting each other in those goals, that we don't want students to feel like I'm not good at this, and that everyone else recognizes it and there's nothing to celebrate that difference, to showcase something that they are good at. So really just taking a look at those 24 kids in our class, making them feel like one unit, but also making sure that we are acknowledging those differences and making sure those differences don't feel as negative, that we're bringing them as positives and working with all the strengths in our classroom. So if I missed something, please ask a further question, but that's kind of the general gist, that we really want to make sure that people are feeling confident and feeling good when they come into our classrooms.
Thank you, Ms. McDermott, for the presentation and all your hard work. I just have a couple of questions. For the additional supports and the steps, if a student did not pass one or both of the two parts. The third one, the complete a portfolio appeal. What exactly does that entail? And can they only utilize that step if they've already tried the first two, taking additional tests and didn't pass?
Yes. So the first pathway is that NJGPA or the retake of the NJGPA, and then the second is for us to go through each of their student learning data components and to see. We have another administration of the PSAT in October here in-house, so we would wait to even explore a portfolio assignment until after we receive that information. So we really start to look at all of the different ways that we can have the student just have one assessment take care of it. So we really look at that probably December, January to see, okay, we got the PSAT data back, we're still not quite there. So we would then team up with the support group around that student, their guidance counselor, their teachers, get some input, and then start to work on that portfolio process. The portfolio changes a little bit every year, but is a kind of a number of tasks that the student needs to complete in order to show there's proficiency in basic ELA or math standards. So it's more of a project-based component, and we would have a content area specialist of a math teacher or an EL teacher work individually with that student to complete that. The ASIP class that we have, the curriculum that's being written for that does create some assessments that are going to be very much aligned with the portfolio. So if a student's a part of that class and they're doing these performance-based assessments, some of those assessments will be the portfolio assessments so that they can just kind of take that and move it along instead of feeling like they're duplicating work. So that's part of the way that that course is going to be designed.
Okay, and then one more question. So let's say, because there's no subgroup for this, but let's say a student has a history of performing poorly on standardized tests, because we know some kids just don't test well. So can they skip and go right to the complete portfolio appeal, which it seems like they can't?
Yeah.
But do you have any have you looked at the data and of the kids that don't perform well on standardized tests and see what percentage they fell in as far as passing or failing this test? Do you know what I'm saying?
So the kids,
Like as a subgroup, if it's students that don't generally, historically perform well on standardized tests, do you know where they fell as far as, are they in the 23% that did not pass the math, or has anybody looked at data like that?
It's a little hard for this particular group of students because we kind of had took a break from standardized testing during COVID. So that's going to be a little bit harder of a data point to track with this particular group. But the different assessments they offer of the SAT, PSAT, that's kind of our first stop because we had everyone take it last year, so we can see, all right, students made it or didn't make it with that. We can move on. The AccuPlacer and the ACT test students a little bit differently. So those are why those assessments are included in the overall competency tests. So we can look at which, the student individually and see what their strengths are and maybe suggest those assessments instead for them to take. We can schedule them and administer them in school for them as well before we would move into the portfolio. From my understanding, the portfolio has not needed to be used here in a number of years, even before we took the break from assessments. And I know in my previous district, it was like 2 or 3 students would be at that point. Usually some of the other assessment types got them over the finish line first. The one big change was the ASVAB used to be able to be used as a competency test and no longer is. And that was a test that some of our students did do a little bit better on. So that might change that number a little bit just because that particular assessment has been taken off the table and used to be used more regularly. So this year will be kind of the first year that we see with some of these changes what might need to be done. But I'm incredibly confident that our students will be able to get across the finish line with our support, and that while it is stressful and people feel stress around it, it's something that we feel confident that we're going to be able to support all our families in.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for everything. I saw this presentation in committee, and I thanked you then for your work.
Yep.
Could you go back to the slide about the individualized reports, the one that had the further breakdown about the category of, let's do math, actually, yeah. So is it accurate to say that out of the 23% of students who did not pass or were graduation ready, what percentage of those students were students with disabilities? Same question for economic disadvantage. And then out of that subset for students with disabilities, am I seeing that more students who have IEPs did not do well on the test versus students who have IEPs?
Yes, so that is a big breakdown there. Off the top of my head, I don't have the actual numbers.
I thought you said in committee it was about 57% of the 23% that
Right,
failed
so
math.
Students with IEPs are not graduation ready, 57% of those students.
Okay,
Right.
so out of that 23%, am I understanding this right? 57% of that number were students with disabilities. Is that right?
No. So the 23% is made up of a number of students. So really, it is these subgroups kind of chunked up in different portions. So I can create that. That's going to be a little bit more of
So
a
what
individual.
does the 57% mean then?
So of the students who have IEPs that took the assessment, 57% of those students that have IEPs are not considered graduation ready.
Okay,
So let's say 100 students,
I see.
took
Okay.
it.
So-
57 of them did not.
So
meet
what
the
are we
graduation
doing
requirement.
for students that do not have IEPs and are, actually, looks like they're performing better, if I'm understanding this chart?
Yes.
I mean, how did that happen? And what are we doing now? I mean, I understand, you know, the teacher with special disability, they're going into the classrooms, but it's a bit of a surprising number. And same question for the economic disadvantaged students. I mean, are they going to be able to come to school after school or have these extra supports, et cetera, et cetera? You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a complex answer in a sense.
It's okay,
If I
I'm
could
ready.
answer it very easily, I
I'm
would.
ready. I've
But-
studied these numbers.
Yeah, so I think some of the decisions that we made, especially around, like, say, like Algebra 1 CP class, right? Both we have students in there that have an IEP and do not have an IEP. And we weren't seeing a lot of stellar numbers coming out of the 7.5 credits the way it was scheduled. So some of our decision to kind of break that course up and teach the 5 credits like the CPE, and then have that additional individualized support is almost, it's not, I would never say it's like a study hall, right? But it's an additional time for that student to break away from their math instruction, not have it tacked on for that longer period of time where they're already feeling a little drained, right? So they're meeting with also possibly a different teacher, having instruction a little bit designed a little bit differently in again, a smaller group setting. So we can really have that personalized and differentiated. I think part of the issue that we're seeing is that since Algebra 1 is the lowest math that we really have here, the first math course that we have, we still have students that might not be fully ready for that Algebra 1, that we really need to take a look at their individual gaps in understanding of math concepts and fill those in and teach to those individual students. So that's going to give us the opportunity to do that, I think, a little bit better. In terms of our
But,
students.
If I could just interrupt, though, you have to have an IEP to be placed in that 2.5 credit course, no?
You do not.
You do not. And who makes that decision?
Most of those recommendations are coming up from the middle school based on the math courses that they're a part of in the middle school, if they're a part of the CP or CPE level course.
I understand, okay.
And then speaking to economically disadvantaged students, and are they going to be prepared? Part of that is one of the reasons that we are exploring a new schedule, because some of our students aren't really able to get that academic support between 2:45 and 3:15. They take the bus and they don't necessarily have a ride to come get them whenever. So if we're able to build that into that unit lunch where there's math labs and writing labs and science support, and have teachers be available for students to come and ask their questions during that hour time, that's where we've really seen other districts have success with meeting the needs of those individual students. So they still can have their social time, a half hour, they're eating with their friends, all that good stuff, and then they're able to come and ask those questions on a regular basis. So we're really trying to increase access with that. And that would even be for our students who are English language learners. Most of them, again, are falling in that same area. Now, that academic support is where we're trying to fill the gap with that right now. So students are able to go home, but then receive help at a time that's, you know, accommodating for both them and the teacher later at night on Zoom. And if a student doesn't have Wi-Fi, things like that, we're working that out with them here so that we can make sure that they have access at home.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Thank you for the presentation. One question on the IEPs. I noticed a disparity between math graduation ready and English graduation ready. Is that a common thing, or is there an explanation for why English was so much higher graduation ready?
Just as a 91.9% and 77% for the whole district?
No, for the IEP.
Oh, for the student with IEPs.
Yeah.
It's common across what I've seen from other districts' data so far.
Is it?
That people outperformed on the ELA and performed a little bit not as successfully on the math portion of the assessment. I think the helpful thing will be the next release that they have really drills down to those individual standards for us to see when was that taught, and if that might be an Algebra 1 concept that our students have moved on so much further from, or things like that we can really make better decisions around. But as an overall trend for the NJGPA across the state, most people did better on ELA than math. And then we see that in our subgroups as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Ms. McDermott, thank you so much for your presentation, for all of your hard work with the team. Thank you. Okay, we'll go back on stage and continue with the rest of the meeting.
So I just have a question for Dr. Dionisio and Ms. Eno. In light of the fact that Ms. Koulikortis is not joining, could we discontinue this service just to protect the integrity of our meeting and whatnot?
It's already logged off, correct?
Okay, while that's being done, I think we can move on to the board committee reports. First up is Ms. Doreen Mariani, Chair of the Athletics, Arts, Extracurriculars, and Communications Committee. Ms. Mariani? Yes. There you go.
I do not know what was said, but apparently it was enough to have her believe there was a misalignment on the board with respect to the proposal, so she withdrew her proposal. I would like to make it abundantly clear it is not illegal to hire a public communications firm. Like any other vendor contract, it will be formulated to comply with laws and policy. The process was completed, but unfortunately, Ms. Perlow, as I said before, withdrew her proposal, which was regrettable because she was recommended by the board council. She had incredible credentials and works with many school districts in the state. The committee has continued on to search for a replacement vendor, and many board members have met a potential new candidate through committee meetings. On July 11th at our AAEC meeting, we interviewed a communications firm. They explained their capacities and qualifications and gave multiple examples of work they have done for school districts, including the fact that 70% of their clients are school districts. The committee recommended that pricing and a proposal be obtained, which was and has been shared with the board. I should hope that the board members will not stray from policy or procedure and that they would contact me as the chair first. We will continue to discuss this at the committee level, and like any other vendor contract, it will go to council and administration for review and approval. Moving on to the BOE webpage, the committee and administration are exploring options on how our website presents. Next, several years ago, the superintendent asked for the athletic handbook to be reviewed, and that is currently underway. regarding the Oakland Communications Commission having issues about continuing to air board meetings on Oakland TV for the community to see. Dr. Dionisio has communicated to the OCC that he has contacted Board Council, and they have advised that the municipality will have to send Oprah requests if they wish to continue to get downloadable videos. Last, the board president brought to my attention that it is the 60th anniversary of Indian Hills, September of 2024, and the 70th anniversary of Ramapo in 2026. She has suggested that this committee make recommendations that these celebratory milestones be recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mariani. That leads to our Education and Personnel Committee, which is headed by Mr. Tom Bogdansky. Mr. Bogdansky?
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. I first want to apologize because this is a really long one, so I'm going to try not to bore you and try to talk through this rather quickly. We met on July 18th for over 2 hours, and again on July 20th for over 2 hours. I think collectively it was about a 5-hour meeting. First agenda item was Care Solace. Care Solace is a digital platform designed to simplify and streamline the process of assessing mental health and wellness services. They were spirited conversations regarding data collection, sharing, and storage, but all questions were answered thoroughly, allowing the committee to feel comfortable moving forward. The Bush Law Group spent over 6 hours ensuring the contract was vetted and met their approval. The committee supported the program. The next agenda item was the Thrive program. Thrive is an independent mental health provider. We have a similar service with Care Plus. The administration, working with guidance supervisors, recommends combining the services provided by Care Plus with the addition of an additional clinician from Thrive Alliance. As a result, the district will not renew the Care Plus contract. The committee supported this program. Next agenda item was the Thrive Alliance training and certification. This program teaches schools, psychologists, social workers, counselors, and other personnel how to assist students with mental health concerns that impact learning. This certification is supported by ESSER funds from the 2023-2024 school year. Next agenda item was the IDEA grant approval. The district will receive $450,137 through the IDEA grant. I'd like to see more of these. The next agenda item was the Child Study Team. Mrs. Ellen Tarlow, a psychologist at Indian Hills Child Study Team, is retiring, and rather than fill Ms. Tarlow's position with another psychologist, the district will hire a social worker, making the Child Study Team a compilation of one learning disability teacher, one school psychologist, and one learning disability teacher consultant as recommended by the Palestis report. The committee supported this program. Next agenda item, NJGPA presentation. Thank you, Ms. Fisher. I greatly appreciate it. The next agenda item was the professional district goals, which we talked a little bit about and Ms. Fisher responded to. The district will focus on the following 4 development goals: increase exposure to engagement and mathematical concepts, increase exposure and engagement with informational texts, inclusive and supportive educational environments, and lastly, the successful transition to a rotating block schedule. Please note, the committee was very concerned about the term inclusion and asked Ms. Fisher to explain in detail, noting the community is conservative and very concerned with DEI infiltration into the school system. Ms. Fisher answered in detail that this goal is tailored for social, emotional learning with the understanding that students learn differently and at different speeds. This is not a form or method of introducing DEI in the curriculum. Thank you for your explanation. I greatly appreciate that. The next agenda item was the ESEA grant. The district submitted its application for the Elementary and Secondary Education Act's ESEA funds. The application focused on supporting funds to address the district's needs and support the continued achievement of the district. Next agenda item, I hope you're all with me, was the professional development. The IRH district is looking forward to working with Barrett Gordon to develop literacy strategies with our staff to support interdisciplinary connections. The committee has reservations about Ms. Gordon and her public ideology. Ms. Fisher understood the concerns of the committee and spoke at length regarding what will and will not happen. She assured the committee Ms. Gordon's personal opinions and belief are not part of this strategy and process. The next agenda item were the textbooks. The following courses have new textbooks ready for approval: Physics CP, AP Physics 1 and 2 Honors, Chemistry AP, Algebra 1 CP and CP1, French 1 CPE, 2 CPE, 3 CPE, 3H, 4 CPE, and 4H. We stress the need for all curriculum and textbooks to be reviewed by board and community at least 30 days prior to a board vote pursuant to policy 2150. Next agenda item was dual credit. The following agreements will be approved to continue offering dual enrollment with Quinnipiac University, Centenary University, Bergen County College. The next agenda item was the SSD job description. This description is the district is proposing a formal job description for the role of Services for Students with Disabilities Coordinator. This new proposed job description will change the current structure and cut the district costs in half from $23,000 to roughly $11,000 per year. The next agenda item was the IEP status. As of Thursday's meeting, Dr. Moriello has not received any comprehensive IEPs from any flow towns, but expects them to be readily available as soon as today, so hopefully he's received them. The next agenda item is the special education contracts. The committee has recommended that all third-party contractors have unified contracts written and approved by district council. Ms. Sullivan is working with our law firm to get these contracts in place. Dr. Moriello stressed that some independent teachers may not want to enter into a complicated contract, and we may lose some special education teachers. With that in mind, the committee asked that in certain cases, the contracts to be tailored for single teachers. Next agenda item was remote instruction. In April, Governor Murphy issued an executive order that became P.1 2020 C.27. This law provides for the continuation of instruction in the event of a public health related district closure so that schools can utilize virtual or remote instruction. And the last agenda item was board goals. The committee has agreed to the following process for the 2023-2024 school year board goals. 1, the committee members each shared their iteration of board goals. 2, the committee will work collectively and collaboratively to come to an agreement on the board goals. Once the committee has agreed to the board goals will be shared with the entire board for their feedback, revisions, and overall approval. Dr. Dionisio has agreed with this process and thinks it is the best way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Up next is our chair of our Finance and Facilities Committee. That's Mariana Amelo. Ms. Amelo?
Thank you. Our Finance and Facilities Committee met on July 17th. It was a very full agenda, so I'm going to apologize ahead of time that it's going to be a long report. And also, forgive me, I'm probably going to repeat some of the things that Ms. Zeno said earlier. So we talked about the ESIP. We went over project status. We reviewed most recent status of the energy conservation management projects. The first being the lighting and controls. Lighting retrofits are 98% completed at Indian Hills, and they're currently working at Ramapo High School. We should achieve substantial completion prior to the start of the school year. Then we talked about energy management system integration, EMS upgrades being performed, zone scheduling, temperature setback, and unoccupied room air shutoff significantly increase system efficiency as well as district utility savings. AME, who is our vendor, has all controls ready to install. Final completion is expected by December of 2023. Building envelope weatherization, construction completed at both locations. Freezer thermostat controls. Freezer thermostats will be installed once new walk-in units are installed. Water conservation, urinal flush valve retrofits and faucet aerator installations to occur in August after bathroom fixtures are installed. Plug load controls. Put electronics to sleep to reduce electrical consumption. Installation will begin 7/18. They've already begun. Retro commissioning. Contract executed, vendor to perform site HVAC investigations and provide deficiencies report by end of August. Solar PPA. Utility company will perform coordinated electric survey prior to granting interconnection approval to solar landscape. Survey determines if utility electrical upgrades need to be performed in order for RAH Solar to be tied into the electrical grid. After survey completion, solar landscape will submit for permitting, and the solar panel installation cannot commence until roof work is completed. A question came up in committee. The committee asked what happens if we receive negative survey results and we need costly utility electrical upgrades performed and can't tie into the electrical grid. The administration said they would let us know, and in fact, this meeting was last Monday. We received answers today from Ms. Zeno, and I emailed them to everyone on the board this afternoon. So everyone can reference those answers. Then we talked about roofing upgrades. So the bid opened on July 19th. Prior bids received were $1.3 million over budget. DCO Land and Solar Landscape scaled back on the solar layouts to reduce roof sections needing upgrades. They rearranged panels to achieve the required 15-year warranty and stay within budget. Approximately 88% of our roofs were supposed to be upgraded according to what DCO presented to the board and the administration last year prior to entering our agreement with them. Maintaining our roofs cost RAH approximately, it could cost like $1 million to $2 million a year, and if we upgrade 88% of our roofs, the ESIP project was supposed to save us a lot of money in the future. The committee asked what percentage of our roofs are now being upgraded under the new layout plan. The administration said they would find out and let us know, which again, the board members can refer to Ms. Zeno's email response today to that question. The committee was made aware that day that an infrared roof moisture scan thermal analysis was recently done to determine the condition of our RIH roofs. The scan provides a way to detect and identify specific areas of wet insulation and moisture present within flat and low-slope existing roof systems. The committee questioned why DCO didn't conduct this scan before and not after they gave us an estimated installed hard cost of $2.2 million for roofing contracts last year before we approved the ESIP. There is greater percentage of wet areas than DCO thought there would be that need to be replaced. The cost of the scan was $8,000. Due to the greater percentage of wet areas, the ESIP project is $1.3 million over budget. The committee expressed that the analysis would have been a good investment regardless of ESIP. Perhaps the analysis should have been done prior to approving the ESIP agreement. The committee discussed ideas, strategy on how to proceed with roofing upgrades and asked for further info from the administration before making a decision. Again, board members can refer to the email responses from Ms. Zeno about this, what I just talked about. DCO progress payment in the amount of $444,796 is mostly covering weatherization and lighting upgrades. They were not discussed, nor were any backup documents shared the day of the meeting to guide the committee's board decision-making. But there is information in the email today. We talked about summer 2023 construction projects, facility toilets and custodial toilets. Demo is complete. Doorways are widened to comply with ADA. Plumbing to commence. The committee reported to the administration constituents' concern about a resident of Franklin Lakes calling into a radio talk show reporting RIH was installing urinals in the girls' bathrooms. The administration said they are not and weren't planning to install urinals in the girls' bathrooms. Field lighting. All equipment is received. Installation to commence on 7/17. Tennis courts. Significant progress has been made. Courts will not be ready for August tennis practice. Athletic directors reaching out to municipalities to use community courts. To use community courts. New windscreens to be installed. The committee was unaware of new windscreens being installed and asked if this was part of the original project plan or a new add-on. The administration said they would ask and get back to us. Walk-in boxes. The demo is complete. Replacements are still in manufacturing process, and we will rent a temporary refrigeration unit at Ramapo before the school year begins. And lastly, we talked about the snack stand as far as projects, and the status with that is that DeCaro Rubino, which are our architect, is working on a proposal, and snack stand would be at Indian Hills. We also talked about sale and purchase of Apple devices, lease funded, new equipment delivered, 50% of recycled laptops were picked up, and a certified check received. So balance to be picked up next week. Board members' facilities tours. August dates were provided in an email to the board from the administration, or dates were provided to us from the administration. Board members, just please respond if you are interested in participating. Respond back to me in the tour with your availability. Future construction projects. Proposed construction projects for next summer to be determined in the future once we get through the activity of summer projects for summer 2023. And the committee will have further discussion on possible ideas after the facilities tours. Joint demographic study with flow districts. The committee asked administration some time ago to look into a demographic study, and we are hoping we can get this info as soon as it's able to be done, and we'll report back the status of administration's effort to secure a demographer. It could be, I'm sorry, I'm trying to understand my handwriting. It could be really useful information to study the declining enrollment, possibly at Indian Hills, among other reasons why it would be very good information to have. Cell tower bid. The Ramapo Indian Hills tower owner wishes to extend the antenna to accommodate additional tenants, such as Dish Wireless, to rent space. The committee asked for recommendations concerning the safety of extending the antenna and about insurance. Administration will look into it and let us know. Oprah requests. There have been and continue to be this year a large number of Oprah requests, and the committee asked if the administration had any recommendations on how to increase efficiency, reduce time spent by the business office on processing the Oprahs, and reduce expenses. Administration will discuss and let us know if they have any recommendations. Finance. We talked about budget 22-23, the budget surplus for 22-23 school year. It's too soon to accurately predict, as not all revenues expenditures are entered. The committee was informed the business office will not close the books till early August. Therefore, the board will not have an exact amount till then. But the best estimate is $2.2 million total, $1.4 million allocated to next year's school budget, and the remainder, the $800,000, about $800,000, will go into our capital reserves. Communication consultant firm. We reviewed the cost proposal of a new possible firm that we could use, company we could use. The board, through multiple committees, is exploring the benefits of leveraging communication to reach a broader audience and to advance its goals for achieving more balanced enrollment, increasing community engagement. Proposed communication goals, 3 priorities for the 23-24 school years from this company, firm. Communication with the wider flow community, not just RH parents and students, addressing the enrollment disparity or imbalance, multiple year continued decline in student population at Indian Hills, preparing to mark Indian Hills' 60th anniversary in 2024. Storytelling and communication engagement are key action steps. Proposed budget is $30,000 for 1-year contract, $2,500 a month for an average of 20 to 25 hours of this company's time a month times 12. Approximately up to 300 hours for a year of service, $100 an hour. The committee had a chance to consider and address any and all questions and concerns that members and the administration may have had concerning the possible retention of a public communications consulting firm should a resolution appear on the future Board of Ed agenda. Administration recommended at this time to hold the responsibility for an improvement plan recruiting effort on the building principals and will create an administrative committee as per the strategic plan by June of 2024 to address the decline in the student population at Indian Hills. DCO, a fee breakdown. This is the last thing, I promise. So a request from a board member for info was sent to the business office July 11th in reference to how the 21.2% DCO payment or fee was is calculated. To date, the committee has not been provided with a clear answer. Members of the committee cannot connect the payments to any formulas under the DCO contract. Not all payments match the specifics of the contract that are required in the payment schedule and descriptions. The committee asked for additional details justifying the payments to DCO, both in substance and numerics. The committee expressed concern. The DCO implementation contract was never presented to the board for approval prior to the finance closing. Administration will look for additional information and follow up with the committee with answers to questions and concerns, which Ms. Zeno did send us some of that information today, which thank you very much. And that is it with my report. It was very long, and I'm sorry. But I'm gonna have a much shorter one.
Thank you so much. That's a big committee, so we understand why there was so much information. So you're up again next, Ms. Emelo, to report on negotiations.
Yes. The negotiations committee met on July 10th, and we have another committee meeting scheduled for tomorrow, the 25th. At our last Board of Ed meeting, the board approved a memorandum of agreement with the RIHEA, thanks to the hard work of our committee members, Kim Anch and Doreen Mariani, and our board president, Judy Sullivan, and our superintendent, Dr. Denisio. In collaboration with the RIHEA committee chair, John Gaccione, RIHEA president, Michelle Clancy, and committee members, Danielle Migliacci, Lisa Higby, and Anthony Jesimondo. I hope I pronounced all those correctly. Our next steps are finalizing the RIHEA formal bargaining agreement, which we have been working on, and with respect to the RIHSA, which is the RIH Supervisors Association, we are currently working to prepare for and to schedule our first meeting with their negotiations team and look forward to meeting with them soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. That leads to our policy committee chaired by Ms. Anch, Kim Anch. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. The Policy Committee met on July 19th. Policy 2431, Extracurricular Activities Competition, is listed on tonight's agenda under PO1. This is one of the policies listed on the recent Strauss-Esme audit as needing an update. The committee is recommending a first read for tonight. Policy 2431.4, Prevention and Treatment of Sports-Related Concussions and Head Injuries, is also listed on tonight's agenda under PO1. The committee is recommending that for a first read tonight also. Regulation 2431.1, Emergency Procedures for Sports and Other Athletic Activity, listed on tonight's agenda under PO2. The committee is recommending a first read for that tonight. The next policy meeting is scheduled for August 10th.
All right, thank you so much. So on the agenda is a report by the ad hoc committee, but I believe the purpose of that committee is closed now because we retained new counsel at the last meeting. So I don't believe there's any report to render. Is that correct, Mr. Bogdansky?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you so much. That concludes our board committee reports. We're now going to move to public comment. So can I have a motion to open the floor for public comment?
So moved.
Mr. Bogdansky, thank you.
Second.
Ms. Mariani, thank you for the second.
Mr. Bogdansky.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate.
Yes.
Ms. Emelo.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Ms. Anch.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes. All right, anybody wishes to speak, please come to the podium. Share your thoughts with us.
Hi, good evening. Michelle Clancy, President of the RIHEA. In June, the RIHEA and the Board of Education, came to an agreement for a new one-year contract prior to the expiration of the previous contract. This settlement provides another year of continued labor peace for our district. The RAHEA would like to thank the members of our own negotiations committee and the members of the board's negotiation committee for their hard work and dedication and for reaching a fair settlement for both parties. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Sue Graglia. I'm from Wyckoff. My children are all grown up and they're out of the system. But I am here because I'm a taxpayer and a concerned citizen about what's being taught in our schools to our children and also for the future of my grandchildren. I'm speaking for two reasons. One, at the last Board of Ed meeting, a major accomplishment by our board members was completely dismissed. The teachers have a new contract. We owe all our thanks to the negotiations committee. From all of us in the Flow Committee, we are grateful to have on our board the committee chair, Ms. Mariana Emolo, Ms. Kim Anch, Ms. Doreen Mariani, and of course our board president, Judy Sullivan. Our community is fortunate to have you. I commend the committee members for their focus and commitment to the job at hand while consistently being placed under attack publicly. Secondly, Dr. Dionisio and the board said there will be a culture shift. I am concerned some of our teachers may be presenting controversial theories such as gender theory, the use of pronouns to describe gender identity, the 1619 Project, etc. to our students. I am concerned these will be presented without letting the students know these are opinions and theories. I am concerned these theories, which are divisive and controversial, will be taught without presenting the other side. When a teacher presents one of the controversial theories to the class without presenting a convincing opposition to the theory, the student is prevented from having an informed opinion on a divisive theory. They are being taught what to think, not how. This is not good teaching. When a controversial theory or opinion has been presented as certainty, the teacher has become an ideologue. The superintendent and the school board must prevent this type of teaching. The teachers who present a controversial theory to their class, such as the use of pronouns or aspects of the 1619 Project, must communicate to their students this is a theory, an opinion, and must present the well-reasoned arguments which credibly challenge the controversial theories. If they cannot do both, they may not present theory at all. It will encourage debate and enforce critical thinking. I asked Dr. Dionisio and the board if they will adopt this as policy, and if not, what policy they will enact to prevent teachers from presenting only one side of these ideologically driven, divisive, and controversial opinions and theories. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Hi, Dawn Kumar, Oakland. Thank you everyone for being here. It's always a late night. So, I'm short, sorry. A couple things. I know that there have been discussions about the Oprah request, and then there was another mention of the fact that in order for someone to get a downloadable meeting, they have to submit an Oprah request. So, I don't know how that all plays in if we're talking about the money and things associated with Oprah requests, if people are asking for meetings, etc. And then I'm kind of confused as to why board goals are being set in education committee and not as a full board. Usually they are full board discussions. And as far as communication goals, again, you mentioned the downloading and having to request the downloadable content. And you want to be more transparent and communicate those things. So why do we have to submit an Oprah request in order to get the meetings if we want to be more transparent and communicate. And last thing, Mr. Bogdansky said this about the committee and talking with a candidate who is a teacher, who is a professional, and worrying about their particular public-facing ideology. I'm a teacher. I teach chemistry. That's what I teach. If you are a teacher who teaches, say, social studies, yes, you teach many different complicated topics, but you were taught how to teach those concepts and taught all of the different things that go along with those things. Teachers are professionals, and I want to stress this because a lot of people are coming up here and saying things about teachers and about how I don't trust that they'll teach both sides. You're looking for something that may not be there. I'm not saying it never happens anywhere ever, but unless you come home with something from a student, there are people who don't have children in the system and are asking these questions and aren't seeing these things coming home yet. Somehow they're like concerned about the both sides aspect of this, but they haven't seen anything. And that's just my overall. Teachers are professionals. Teachers are there to support the students. Parents have way more influence than teachers ever have. The only thing I want my students to do is their homework. If I could get them to do one thing, it would be their homework. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Sorry. Does someone want to go next? Because I can't find my paper. You want to go? Okay. Sorry. First, welcome Mrs. Zeno. Is that it? Thank you for finally replying to Oprah requests.
Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Philomena LaForgia, Oakland. I want to talk on P5C. This person was a new position created for him as a teacher of students with disability social studies at the top of the guide. Oh, actually, this is not what I want to say. I have an edited version, sorry. Can I restart? I just have to find one I have to read. Lots of papers tonight. I'm sorry, I can't find it. I think I left it back there. I'll be back.
Okay, anyone else?
Good evening, Audrey Satters, Oakland. I was just heartened to see the district results of the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment. 21.6% of the Ramapo students, 25% of Indian Hills students are not graduation ready in mathematics. No one really has a lot to say on the indictment of our schools. We did better than the state average, which is good, but we did better than inner city students of Newark and Patterson who are struggling to meet their basic needs every day. I mean, that's comforting unless you're one of the 25% who's not graduation ready here. The number has barely improved over last year's field test results. And you failed to mention the fact that the state lowered the minimum passing grade from 750 to 725 this year. So in reality, the percentage may be worse this year if we use the 750 standard that was used last year. So what do we do? What strategies do we implement? Last year's intervention strategies were more non-specific things, triangulating data, things like that we don't understand sitting in the audience. But it didn't work last year. I see there are a few that are more specific this year. I want to ask, would you go see a surgeon who has a 25% failure rate? No, because administration, he would not allow him to operate. His privileges would be revoked. If there's no accountability in the schools to the teaching and the students, I think it's incumbent upon you these students need to pass their graduation proficiency standards. There's not one senior who's going to attend the summer learning class with incoming freshmen to do Algebra 1, okay? It's just never going to happen. No 18-year-old is going to sit with the incoming 9th graders to review Algebra 1. It's embarrassing, right? No one's going to do that. The new strategic plan puts teaching and learning last. The final bullet point of the entire plan is to develop a committee to examine the enrollment disparity between the schools. No one said we wanted to empower the school teachers to lead the culture shift. We didn't want to reimagine time. Is there proof that block scheduling is going to improve our mathematics scores? I know it sounds good in theory, but what data do you have to support this and the efforts that you're going to put into this transition? I want to be clear what's important to the residents of Oakland, because it's been asked. Education. Education first. That's what we want put at the top of any list, followed right after the disparity between the two schools.
Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. Thank you. Philomena LaForgia. There are so many things wrong with this agenda. P5C, a position was created for this person as a teacher of students with disabilities, social studies, at the top of the guide. Why? Last year, the board approved another position for him as a permanent substitute, which never in the history of RIH existed. And that got him medical benefits, entry into pension system, sick days, et cetera. Then he doesn't even possess any necessary certification to do this position. So once again, if you vote yes, this board will fast track another person into special education position without the credential or experience and pay them at the top of the guide. How many teachers are at the top of the guide? He is not even replacing anyone. Once again, the special education student is being underserved by this administration and the board, and they are not doing their due diligence to hire certified, experienced professionals. By the way, when did you post this position? How many interviews did you have before you decided that this was the right candidate? Dr. D, would this be the protocol for an AD program? Tom Bodansky, are you sleeping in your education committee? Yet P5A, you are paying a physics teacher $30,000 less than the P5C. You mean to tell me that it is harder to find a history teacher than a physics teacher? Are you kidding me, Mr. Bodansky? You are the chair of education and personnel. Why are you not asking these questions? And it is not lost to me that P15, P16, both special education teachers are resigning, but Vivian Union King wants this community to think they're resigning because of Judy Sullivan, okay? And what about P24? You put an agenda item without a description, and then you're all gonna vote for it, so you don't have the public seeing what that description is, but you're gonna go ahead and vote for it. Why don't you take that off the agenda, because that shouldn't be there? Oh my, I have so much more. E7, E8, $430,000 under mental health. Oh my God, with all the money that you guys are spending, this is not a school anymore, it's a hospital. And where's all that money for education? But yet I gotta hear Mr. Bodansky say that we saved money on special education. Wow, all the places to cut. Special education again. And E11, $8,000 you're paying for someone to track our kids. Another parental right out of our pocket. Shame on you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to speak?
Hi, good evening. Kathy Schwartz, Franklin Lakes. Ms. Mariani, I just wanted to let you know that apparently people at home were not able to hear your committee update. It wasn't captured very well on the video. I was able to hear it. I just wanted to point out, you said that Lori Perlow withdrew because Brian DeLate called her. And then you said it's not illegal to hire a PR firm. Lori Perlow is not a PR firm. Lori Perlow is an employee of another district who reports to a superintendent. Lori Perlow was going to come to our district to report to our superintendent, and yet you hired her without even introducing her to, or attempted to hire her, without even introducing her to our superintendent. So that is where the problem lies. Ms. Sullivan said it herself at the last meeting, the board does not hire personnel. Now, you may have an out by trying to go out and now find a vendor to do communications. However, the board policy does say that it's the superintendent's job to do communications. And I think that the big picture that you all seem to be missing, and I heard it in every committee report tonight, is that the board is here to set the vision for the district and to provide the resources, the vision, the mission, the budget. You're not here to micromanage. You hire the superintendent and you let him do his job. Every committee report that I heard tonight was details of everything that Dr. Dionisio is perfectly capable of doing and should be doing without all of this interference. Last thing, I would like to agree with the previous speaker who said that board goals are not a committee discussion. They're a full board discussion that should be had in public. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Margaret Bennett, Franklin Lakes. I wasn't planning on speaking, but my goodness, this is like a parody, only it's not funny. You need to redefine or learn the real definition of how a committees function. I feel so sorry for Dr. Dionisio and now Ms. Zeno, who have to sit through, I heard 4 hours of a curriculum meeting, 4 hours. That's not what you do. The Mariana Amolo's updating us on Flushing. I mean, this is actually would be a comedy, but it's actually not. So just some quick notes. Lots of spirited conversation on words like equity, inclusion, fair, and safe, and how controversial those are. Do we want no equity? Do we want unfair and unsafe? Do we want exclusion? Then board goals, yes and yes. A full board makes board goals. Why is one committee making board goals? Different boards do it differently. We used to have one goal coming out of each committee and then a public conversation where each committee's goal was talked in public, which is where board goals should happen. District contracts, I heard that Judy Sullivan is working with the board council on district contracts, so I'd really like some definition of that. And that's a no-no. There's a lot of no-nos. Brian DeLate doesn't have to contact the committee chair if he doesn't want to. There's no policy that requires that. Any board member can seek out information any way they choose, especially if they're getting stymied from getting it where they should be getting it. A public relations firm, yeah, actually it was illegal, Doreen. There are at least 3 administrative codes that define what you can and can't do when it comes to hiring firms like public relations, and especially employees. There are also state statutes that include the ethics, the code of ethics. So let me see. This was just like notes I was taking while you guys were talking for almost 40 minutes of committee updates. That is not how it happens. You need to have some kind of regrouping and some new board training.
Thank you so much.
Elliot Bannon, Wyckoff. I'm going to kind of piggyback on some things that the woman who came up here first said, Dr. Dionisio and members of the board. When you presented the strategic plan, you stated that there'd be a culture shift, but you never defined what our culture is. You never told us what the issues were that required the shift. So quite frankly, as the other one said, I'm a little concerned this may lead to teaching of controversial theories like gender theory, like pronoun theory, like the 1619 project, without letting the students know their theories or opinions, and without presenting opposing opinions. So I believe a teacher came up here before and said, well, we don't do this. Yes, I'd say the great majority of teachers here are wonderful, fantastic, and maybe all of them are. But I do know that the head of the history department at the last curriculum meeting about a year ago said DEI isn't part of it, but she made sure she stood up and said, but we are teaching the 1619 project. And you can go back and look at that. But she said that. So my concern is, if you're going to teach something like the 1619 project, and I can go through a list of issues that experts find wrong with it, and I'm sure you are aware of them, then I think they should be required to teach the other side of it. Look, and I'm not conflating these theories, which are controversial, with ideas like the Big Bang Theory, which is thousands of well-researched papers to support the theory and very few credible challenges. The reason these theories are controversial is because there are thousands of credible books and papers and articles and essays written by some of the top scholars in their fields which persuasively challenge and convincingly repudiate the assumptions of these opinions. I think you'd agree with me, if a teacher presents controversial theories or opinions as certainty, they're no longer a teacher as we would define it, right? They become ideologues, which is an anathema to teaching. So I ask, what are you going to do if one of your teachers presents a controversial theory like an essay from the 1619 project, or they have, say, a bulletin board that says these are facts, which I have a picture of, and on there they're discussing gender theory, pronouns, without saying, you know what? This is just one person's opinion of this, but there are other opinions, and we're going to present those as well. So let me help you out. I'm sure many of you are aware that there was a survey that found 63% of American students are afraid to speak up, and if they disagree with one of these theories, when they disagree. And it's partially because they don't believe they're going to get support from the administration or the teachers. So let's change that. Because what this should tell us is, if a teacher's going to present one of these theories, not only should she be required to teach the views of the opposing viewpoint.
Mr. Bannon, the time is up. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll come back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Joel Ange, Franklin Lakes. This is my opinion, and does not reflect the opinion of the Franklin Lakes Town Council. I wanted to welcome the new BA. Some of what I'm probably going to go over was already said, but I have questions on P5C also, because I remember that person was hired as a football coach and a substitute in the district. I wanted to know what credentials they have for teaching social studies with special education. What experience teaching either social studies or students with disabilities. Considering how many times this district's had lawsuits and lost, and probably still involved with more people suing for whatever the reasons are, I would think we'd be particularly careful about what qualifications somebody for this position would have right now. I'm not sure how they end up getting a salary, $100,000. Is that the starting salary for special ed, social studies teachers with no experience? I'd like to know any information on curriculum and new textbooks are going to be made available, considering it's going to be voted on next month. Are we adding more classes like Chinese honors that references climate change over 130 times? I'd like to know what that actually would have to do with Chinese honors. I'm not really even sure. The NJGPA standards, English and math tests. Why are we segregating that? Gender, ethnicity. all these other things. And by the way, I only saw 2 genders there, surprisingly enough. I'm shocked at where the rates are of how we're failing. A strategic plan where teaching and learning is dead last, and 8.1% is failing on math, 23% in English. Shouldn't we have students near 100% ready? Is it really better than last year when they lowered it from 750 to 725 to pass? Would it still, where would it be if we compared it using the same 750? And we asked before to be compared to other districts that are more comparable. Can we get these numbers and look at some other places and not be compared to the state average? And we still don't have that. And I still don't really know, average of the state. In Oakland, Wyckoff, and Franklin Lakes, pretty embarrassing. It's amazing why so many people are sending their kids to private schools. I'd like to see data for an accurate comparison to last year. All I hear is Dr. Lorenz, Vivian King, Brian DeLate, and Helen Kouloukoris talk about how everything is all about the students. I haven't seen anything about the students here. And most people that come up here, I don't see them talking about anything to help students either. I'm not really sure that really should be probably the only thing we're worried about here.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, Joseph Kewins, Oakland. My remarks are going to be similar to what the gentleman 2 speakers ago said. I was reading the strategic plan, and I was struck by this idea which said, we will empower school leaders to lead the culture shift. What culture shift? Why do we need a culture shift? Is there something wrong with the culture that we have that we need a shift? Well, if a culture shift is needed, first we have to determine what the current culture is, what's wrong with it, and why it needs to change. And who is actually going to determine what the school's culture should be? A committee to decide on culture norms? Culture is based on values. People have different values which they live by. A large number of people have values and beliefs based on a religious tradition. Others have values and beliefs which are completely from different sources. But when we talk about subjects like this, a culture change or a culture shift, which was going to be engineered basically, and it involves children, then the parents are the one who have the right and responsibility to form their children's values. What role will parents have in engineering this culture shift? The strategic plan declares there will be a committee of students, staff, and community members that will define a set of core values. Naturally, a few parents will be on this, but the vast majority will not. Are we going to guard against political or trendy partisan ideology becoming foundational of our school's new values? And what exactly does culture monitoring system mean? And I don't necessarily bring these things up as a criticism of our RIH. I did appreciate Dr. Dionisio saying earlier that he realizes this is a conservative community and that things like DIE are not very popular in our community. But I asked them, looking around in the context of what is going on in schools at all levels around New Jersey and around the nation. That's all, thank you.
Thank you so much. We are at the 30-minute mark. Does the board want to entertain additional time for public comment? If so, can somebody make a motion?
So moved to continue public comment.
Thank you.
Can we have discussion?
I just want to call for the motion
Second.
first, and then we can have discussion on the motion. I don't have a second yet.
There's a second public session.
I just want to get the second on Mr. Bogdan's. Oh, you did, Ms.
Yeah, she
Marion.
did.
Okay, yeah, board discussion on the motion. Yep.
So there's a second public session of another 30 minutes, so a total of an hour, so.
Okay, that's your comment. Anybody else have
That's
any
my
other
comment.
comments?
Ms. Sullivan, may I be recognized?
Sure.
I understand there's a second public session for comments, but our board meetings run so late that, you know, a lot of people have to leave. So I don't know how many more people want to speak right now, but I would be, you know, open to extending right now.
Okay, looks like we
Ms.
have
Sullivan,
one person online.
Could we have a time limit on how much we're going to extend this, if we're going to extend? this
We
public
can
session?
modify the motion, or you can make a new motion, or we can vote on this motion. You can amend your motion, Mr. Magnansky.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to extend it by 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Anyone?
I second the
that?
motion.
Yes?
Mr. Bogdansky?
Yes.
Mr. Delate?
Yes.
Ms. Amelo?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Mariani?
Yes.
Ms. Ansch?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes. Okay, the motion passes. We have another 10 minutes. Anyone else wish to speak? I see we have one speaker at the podium. Go ahead, please.
Wait, it's not on. Is it on? Okay.
Yes.
Karen Nash, Franklin Lakes, New Jersey. I'm just listening to all of this, and my comment is going to be quick. I have a best friend who actually we met in this school. We actually met on our street and then went to school here together. Her daughter has just transitioned from male to female, went to the Demers school system. I do not understand for the life of me why it has anything to do with the school system. As a family, they went through this for the last 4 years together, and I can't figure out why it's even a thing in high school or any school to be taught this here in this building. It was a family thing, and it worked, and they're great, and he has many, many friends that also needed their family at the time. But to have it here doesn't make sense to me. And to keep it from the parents would be absolutely absurd. I would like to know, with all this talk about it, what are the rules going to be? Who's making the rules? And another comment that I heard just recently, I wasn't here for one of the meetings, but I was told it was said that the parents shouldn't have anything to do with the curriculum and what is going to be taught, said, or whatever. So what defines that for us out here? I know I'm a long way off for having to decide with my family if my granddaughter's going to go here or not. But I think I'd like to start now to know where it's going. I think it is a parent's right. I think it's a whole family's right. And I'm not really sure why it really has anything to do with the curriculum at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Carol Ng from Wyckoff. Just want to quickly address the teacher who came up and said that we were looking for something that's not here. Just pulled up on my phone when we had reviewed the curriculum a couple of years ago. This is in World Civ CPA. It's asking the students to discuss the conflicting theories on Da Vinci's sexuality. And then another, it asks you, what does it mean to come out or stand against what is considered acceptable behavior? So these are the kind of things that we are talking about. We're not looking for something that's not there. But I didn't really come up here to talk about that. I'm just answering her questions. I have my own questions regarding the Thrive Counseling, Sage Thrive Counseling. I think Mr. Bogdansky had said that we were no longer using Care Plus. So I'm curious, what is the difference? What are we saving? You know, what are we saving money by going with Sage Thrive Counseling? And also Care Solace. We mentioned about storage. Is Care Solace a website that provides a referral of mental health counselors, or does it store student information. So I'm not clear on what Care Solace is and what that actually stores. And if it does store student information, how are we going to protect this private health information? And who has access to it? Administrators, teachers? How are students' information, personal health information, kept confidential and private? And then my last question is related to curriculum. Thank you, Mrs. Fisher, for your presentation. I was curious, when will the curriculum be available for review and how long? And I remember last year we had some links that really led to nowhere. We didn't see any of the suggested learning activities. We didn't see the content. It was all related to maybe the learning standards. So we would like it to be a little bit more transparent so that we can see the content. Okay.
Thank you so much.
How much time am I going to get on this clock?
Is the clock reset? I can't see it from here.
3 minutes. Joel Lance, Franklin Lakes. These are opinions of mine, have nothing to do with Franklin Lakes Council. This was in Ramapo hallway for months on end. Get to know the facts. It's a whole board with little cards. Know your rights. Cisgender, pansexual, the Trevor Project, No Name Calling Week, non-binary, it gets better project, lesbian, questioning, ally, effects of, I can't even read that one, homophobia, LGBTQ, transgender something. And you can flip these up, and the answers are right behind them. Right in the main hallway when you walk right in the building. Gender nonconforming. I don't know what the answer is, and I should go back and get pictures of that. Gender, GLAD, what is GSA? So when someone says this stuff's not going on around here, I don't know where they're getting their facts, and there's a lot of great teachers that do a lot of great stuff. And I don't know who stuck this up in the hallway, but that was in Ramapo as soon as you walk in the main entrance for months and months and months on end. So please, stop it with all the, oh, we don't do this and don't do that, because it's going on all over the place, everywhere.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're at the end of the 10-minute extension, I believe, Ms. Demetrio. We have one more 3-minute component. Okay, Ms. Ang.
Okay,
This is
Carol Ang, Wyckoff. It's time to evaluate the track record of Vivian Uden King, who seeks re-election for her second term on the Board of Ed, running under the slogan United for Students. But let's delve deeper into her actions, not just her words. What is her track record and what has she truly accomplished for the students at Ramapo Indian Hills during her last 3 years? As chair of policy in 2022, Uden King made alarming decisions that raised serious concerns about students' rights and privacy. She denied and voted against parents' requests to protect students from invasive psychiatric and psychological evaluations, delving into religious practice, affiliations, and beliefs. She also voted against safeguarding student privacy in school surveys, even when parents demanded oversight. Do we want board members who disregard students' well-being? Furthermore, Uden King voted to reinstate a teacher who distributed an illegal and explicit survey and made students read sexually explicit material out loud. Her vote shows a lack of commitment to ensuring a safe learning environment for our children. How can we trust her to prioritize students when she favors a teacher's interest over student safety? In 2021, Yuden King voted against allowing more time for parents and community members to review the curriculum. This stifles transparency and inclusivity in our education system, denying students a well-rounded and diverse education. By shutting down opportunities for these groups to provide input, Vivian Yuden King is denying students the chance to receive a curriculum that reflects a broader range of perspectives, culture, and knowledge. Advocating for students, Yuden King's record falls short. She didn't advocate for the hockey team at Indian Hills or the aspiration of the dance team to be recognized as a sports team. In fact, she questioned the manner and process the dance team was taken to be recognized as a competitive sports team. This raises doubts about her dedication to promoting opportunities for our students to thrive and to succeed in various fields. In the past 3 years, Vivian Yuden King's actions and behavior do not reflect a prioritization of students' welfare. Her focus seems to be on her own elevation, causing obstacles for board initiatives and using her family business to sue students' parents who ask questions. How is her behavior and actions benefiting students in a meaningful way?
All right, I need a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdansky.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Anch.
Mr. Bogdansky?
Yes.
Mr. DeLate?
Yes.
Ms. Amalo?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Mariani?
Yes.
Ms. Anch?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes. So let me try to answer some of the questions and see if Dr. Denicio wants to answer any questions as well. I believe 2 people made comments about the board goals. It is true that the board goals will be discussed at the board level once the Education and Personnel Committee finishes its work. We are a committee-based form of government. It has been the tradition and custom of the Education and Personnel Committee to fashion the board goals. As long as I've been on the board, this is the 4th year. There will be ample opportunity for board discussion once those board goals reach the board level. Mr. Bogdansky, unless you have anything to add to that?
No, I would just add that there's 9 board members, and if all 9 board members were to submit 4 goals, we'd have 36 goals. To try to fashion that down to 4 comprehensive goals would be rather long. So we are going to work together. We are going to share the goals, and we're going to make sure everybody's on board and approves of them. It's going to be board goals. Thank you.
Thank you. With respect to the comment about Oakland having, the municipality or borough of Oakland having to now download the videos for our public board meetings, and maybe Dr. Denicio would want to speak a little bit more about that. I think he had a conversation with board counsel about that, and I believe that because the videos are not currently downloaded, that the decision was made, and he'll tell me if I'm wrong, that the borough, like any other person or entity, would have to submit an Oprah request to get a downloadable copy. Is that correct, Dr. Denicio? I wasn't in that conversation that you had with board counsel.
That is accurate. So anyone who is interested in getting access to that, because the district does not provide it as a downloadable format, will then have to submit an Oprah request to make sure that we're treating all members of the public equally.
Okay. And so anyone is free on the board, and I believe, hopefully, I'm right about this, our policies allow any public person to make a suggestion about a new policy. So Ms. Anch is the chair of the policy committee, and if any board member wants to make a suggestion that these videos be uploaded in downloadable format. That is something that the policy committee can consider along with administration and make appropriate decisions at that time. Let's see. I don't know if Dr. Dinicio, do you want to say anything about the lowering of the score and how that might or may not impact the results on the...
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Did you want to say anything about the question about the lowering of the score from the 750 to the 725? There was a question about is the true nature of the population's abilities being currently reported because we've downloaded or made lower the score. I wasn't aware of that, so or if I did, I forgot. So I don't know if that changes the nature of Ms. McDermott's report or not, or...
I could let Ms. McDermott comment on that, but what I would state is that, because I don't know that off the top of my head, I can't recall from the conversations, but if that were in fact the case, then that would actually be the case for all students across the entire state of New Jersey, which would then result in that neutralizing and stabilizing the comparison amongst subgroups and amongst ourselves to the state level. So
I guess the only difference would be when you compare it to last year's results, supposedly, right? That would really
potentially
be the only place.
Potentially.
Okay.
I think what's also important to note is that I didn't hear many members of the public actually talking about the whole slide that actually has all of the interventions that Ms. Fisher spoke about. I think that's the critical piece that wasn't discussed by the members of the public, which I think is really important. Those are actually the interventions and the supports that are actually helping our students. I think another key component that's important to note is that, as Ms. McDermott had shared, there are very few students, if any, in the last few years that actually had to qualify for the portfolio assessment, that our students do pass by taking the standardized assessment the second time around, or the option 2, which would be all of those other alternative assessments. So our teachers, our administration are doing an excellent job in helping our students get to that finish line in order to support them to attain their high school diploma.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, there was another question about the length of the Education Committee meeting and the length of the report by the chair of the Facilities and Finance Committee. So the Education and Personnel Committee had 18 agenda items and many, many links to documents, which I'm sure the committee was grateful for. I was certainly grateful for. And so it was really a long agenda. And actually, probably that was the only time this year, right, Mr. Bogdansky, that you ever had to adjourn and continue? And it was only because perhaps some committee members might have had some obligations, and we didn't think we would reach the end of the agenda. That was my recollection.
That is correct, Ms. Sullivan. And also, we had the presentation from Ms. McDermott, which took a lot of time as well.
That's right, I forgot, yes. So the same presentation that we saw tonight by Ms. McDermott was also presented to the committee. So, and then with respect to the Facilities and Finance presentation, well, tonight by the committee member and chair, and Ms. Amelo, feel free to jump in. There was a boatload of information and agenda items on that, including multi-million-dollar projects that we've been working on. So I believe, I'm just pulling it up right now, you had, I think, 12 agenda items. And you were able to complete your committee meeting in one fell swoop, correct?
I was, but it was a couple of hours long.
But you finished.
We did.
Mm-hmm.
We did. But it was definitely a full agenda, and there was actually, I think, 11 agenda items. Oh, no, actually 12. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of them I just skipped, so I didn't even talk about those. But I don't feel badly at all about, giving lots of details, because that's what I'm here for. I'm a representative of the community, and I'm here to give you as much information as possible. So, I'd rather talk about these things than a lot of other things that we, go on and on about up here. So I don't feel badly about talking about actual board business.
Okay. There was a comment about me working with board counsel on the special education contracts. Rest assured, I am not doing that. It was simply a reference that Mr. Bogdansky, I believe, made because I am the one who signed these contracts, and it kind of came to my attention through that. I can't even remember, actually, and then it also came up through committee. But rest assured, I am not negotiating with board counsel and all of these special education vendors. That was my recollection, Mr. Bogdansky. Was that correct?
Yes, since I don't work directly with legal counsel, I was shocked at some of the contracts that are in place with some of our teachers, and I just felt that for the district, we should be protecting ourselves and ensuring that we have a uniform contract for all third-party people. And I think everybody was in agreement. There were some teachers that may not be pleased with trying to sign a very lengthy contract. So I asked in those instances if it was a single teacher that they have a simplified contract. I just think we should be protecting ourselves when it comes to contracts.
So it wasn't teachers, it was really support personnel, I think.
Third-party support.
Right, okay.
Yes.
Did you have anything to further add on that, Dr. Dionisio? On,
Many of those contracts had been reviewed by council in the past.
they did.
And many of those are state-approved contracts as well.
Some of them were. Yeah.
So they're pretty
Yeah.
standard.
Yeah.
So, and my recommendation was that if the board so chooses that you want to review that you do that proactively moving ahead, and give board counsel ample time in order to be able to do that review and make recommendations. So in that way, in advance of next year, when we're at this point in time, that there's nothing that interferes with the approvals and the operations of the district.
Correct, okay. That was my recollection as well. There was another question about teaching certain topics in the curriculum. There was some mention of 1619 project. Let's see what else. Climate change in the Chinese honors program. Culture shift. When did that happen? How does that look? Maybe Dr. Dionisio would be the best one to answer those questions if you wanted to. Did you want to answer that, Dr. Dionisio?
Once you're done, I'll go through all of my parts.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I'll put that aside. For the date for the curriculum release, did you report on that, Mr. Bogdansky, in your committee? I don't recall if you actually said when we anticipate that to be released both to board members and to the public. I can't recall.
So I did not report. I apologize. I'm going to say it's August 21st. Ms. McDermott, correct me if I'm wrong. We did ask that if there were any of the subject matter available prior to that time, to release that in batches. If you possibly could, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you. You want to say this later, Dr. Dionisio, or did you want to say anything further or not? No? Okay, thank you. There was another question about the curriculum. I think I hit that. There were some questions about the Care Solace agreement and the Thrive contracts. Maybe Dr. Dionisio is the more appropriate person to ask about that. And I think that might be the end of the questions. So looks like the rest are for Dr. Dionisio.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. So there are a couple of comments in regards to hiring practices. So typical to all hiring practices and the ones that are on here this evening, jobs are all posted. They're posted for the minimum number of days. Interview process is conducted with fidelity with stakeholders that are involved in order to interview the candidates that have applied for the positions. Certain positions are more difficult to fill than others. Sciences, math, special education, for sure. Those are very difficult certifications to find, and very high demand. As we all know, we've been talking a lot about an in-class resource program this year in order to help support our students with disabilities, co-teaching model across the entire district. We've committed with a partnership with St. Elizabeth's University. We're very proud of that work, and we're thankful for the board for that support. Part of that is making sure that we have teachers that are certified as we're doing and leading this shift in order to support our students. And they're our priority. And a big part of that is obviously, in filling these positions with certified teachers to meet our students with disabilities through the TOSD program, making sure that we have people who are able to meet our students' needs. We have our content specialists, we have our special education teachers who hold the certifications and then develop and learn those skill sets in order to help support our students. Anyone who's hired is certified. We don't hire staff members and put them in front of our students unless they are certified. And when we have teachers that are hired, sometimes they're hired at $60,000 or $70,000. Sometimes they're hired at $90,000 or $100,000. That's all reflected in what their professional experience is. And that's how teachers get hired on a salary guide. We have a collectively bargained salary guide with our Teachers Association, which we're grateful for, and that clearly indicates the number of years of service that teachers should be compensated accordingly for their expertise, their certification, and their experience, as well as their education. So a teacher who has a bachelor's degree will naturally be paid on that salary guide for less than a teacher who has a master's or a doctorate. And that's how teachers are hired. So that's an important notation for just to address and provide some support there for our community. And the direction that we're moving in, I'm very, very proud of, and I'm very grateful for our teachers and our administrators who are leading that shift for us. There were some questions in regards to Thrive Counseling and Care Plus. So for a number of years, we had, a very long time, we've had 2 counselors in our Thrive program that provides social emotional support for our students in our school. That goes back to what I talked about earlier, Maslow before Bloom, making sure that we're supporting our students where they are at, to make sure that we're supporting, as part of that, their social emotional needs, so that way students are ready for learning in the classroom. So we have a responsibility to all of our students. Coming out of the pandemic, in the middle of the pandemic, we utilized ESSER funds in order to be able to bring on Care Plus. So we brought on a 3rd counselor. Now that Dr. Moriello has joined our team and had an opportunity this past year to review all of our programs and see where we have efficiencies, where we can improve our efficiencies, it was really more a matter of eliminating our partnership with Care Plus and reallocating those funds to the Thrive program. So we're essentially staying consistent with now 3 counselors because the needs exist there, right? It goes back to, what do our kids need? And our kids need this support, so that way they're supported in the classroom, outside of the classroom, so that way they could be successful in the classroom. It's fairly budget neutral. It saves us a few $1,000s. That wasn't the reason for it. It was really more to have one provider to streamline services, and we have a long-standing relationship with Thrive that we're very, very pleased with, and we want to continue to build upon that. Care Solace is a new opportunity for the district to be able to partner with Care Solace as an independent vendor. The purpose of Care Solace, if I recall correctly, they're in approximately 700 districts across the nation, and Care Solace would be a provider that would work with families and with the district, but if families wanted to engage, and they would elect, parents would have to elect and sign release forms in order to partner with Care Solace. Care Solace is a conduit and a support for families who want to take advantage of it. So if their child is in crisis, or they need to help navigating, trying to partner up with mental health professionals outside of school to provide those necessary supports for their children, Care Solace will assist with that. And those are the services that they provide. Care Solace has signed releases that the parents would have to elect to be part of it, and they would work in tandem and in partnership with the school district. And this is an area where we have seen over the years parents do struggle. They do struggle, whether it's a time of crisis or a time of angst, and they're looking for a medical provider, often around mental health, sometimes around substance use, and they're looking for support. Difficult sometimes to navigate the health insurance rules and the providers and who they accept, and Care Solace is a resource that has been successful in providing that support for families across the nation and in New Jersey with much success. So I think that this is a really positive direction to be able to support our community, especially in time of need. And parents have complete control over whether or not they want to participate in this. We are not compelling them to do so. We'll leave that option up to them as they have that right. And then there was some talk around the strategic plan. There is no priority around the 4 goals. It's been very clear. So those are just the way the goals are laid out. Though we have 4 overarching goals, as we talked about. We talked about the teaching and learning. We've talked about culture and climate. We've talked about reimagining time. We've talked about social emotional support and well-being for our students. And all of those are key components that came from the priorities and the feedback from our community through our focus groups, through our surveys that went out over the course of 14 to 16 months. The information's all there. So those are the main priorities. We have 4 goals. We have 14 initiatives, and we have 51 objectives, and we have lofty goals, and they're goals that I'm proud of that the team developed with the stakeholder and community feedback. The culture shift, I'll just say it because people don't have it in front of them, but it's on the website. It was in the presentation, but I'm going to read it because I think it's important to clarify. So under culture and climate, the goal is our culture supports a growth mindset for a life filled with meaning and purpose. The actual initiative says empower school leaders to lead the culture shift. So the question was, well, what does that actually mean? Well, in the column on the strategic plan in the document to the right, under objectives, there are 2 objectives there. And they're clearly articulated. So these are the important components that will allow us to guide the work that came from the feedback from our community. So number 1, or letter A, is district and school leadership teams will participate in professional development during administrative leadership retreats to expand learning and growth focused on vision of shared leadership. So shared leadership is, I as the superintendent, this board doesn't sit up here and just drop down edicts and rules, but what we're doing is we're leveraging our capacity as leaders. We're doing the same thing. I'm doing the same thing with our leadership team. I don't have all of the answers. I'm working with our amazing leadership team. We're doing that then and expanding that with our teachers because that's the vision of a shared leadership. We want to make sure that rather than a top-down approach, that we're leveraging out and we're hearing the voices of all of the important people that are going to help us guide the important work forward with the priority of keeping our students at the forefront of every single decision. And the second component that I think is really important under Objective B is form a committee of students, staff, and community members that will analyze the existing culture via surveys and focus groups, identify the positive aspects that align with our core values and mission. So as we've developed a strategic plan, what we still have to do is we still have to revisit our current mission statement that we have on our website. We haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. So that's part of this evolving work around the strategic plan. The second part of it is developing a vision statement. And then aligned with that, we're looking at what our core values and beliefs are, right? The core values and beliefs of teaching and learning and school. You know, what does that mean for our kids to make sure that every student, when they walk in these doors, that they feel safe, that they feel welcomed, that they feel seen, and that they're heard, right? Making sure that everybody feels safe coming into the school, because once again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier. If we're making sure that every one of our students that we can address those needs, then they will be ready for learning, right? So it's teaching and learning and schooling is very complex, right? If it were easy, somebody would have this silver bullet that, you know, you could solve the problems very, very quickly. But we know that that's not the case, right? So that's why all of these aspects are critically important, and I think it's, we're pointed in the right direction.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me get to board comments now. You want to answer a question? I'm so sorry. So, yes, go ahead. She wanted to answer a question. Any?
Okay. I'd like to address the question about a communications firm. And I was looking on the New Jersey School Public Relations Association webpage, and in bold lettering it states, yes, capital letters, you can have school communications. Let me first explain what the NJSPRA is about. Their website says, welcome to the New Jersey Professional Association for School Communications, practitioners and school leaders providing training, resources, networking, and support in everything school communications. Then there's a little box that says the state of New Jersey fiscal accountability regulations permits public school districts to hire staff or contracted service providers to perform school communication functions. School communications is much more than traditional public relations, which does have some restrictions in the regulations per the Department of Education. Today, the communication needs of a school district go way beyond the PR activities as defined in the New Jersey Department of Education, so school districts can absolutely have a staff position for communications or hire a PR agency to assist in their communications effort. I just wanted you to know that. Feel free to check out that website, New Jersey School Public Relations Association. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. Guess we'll move on to open board discussion. The reason why I'm pausing is because I'm wondering if we need a bathroom recess break. I think I need one myself. Miss Mariana Amelo is shaking her head.
I was just going to suggest that.
Would any board member object if we just took a 5-minute bathroom break?
No.
Would that be okay? Do I need to take a motion on that, Ms. Demetrio? Or can I just have a recess?
We just do I.
I'm just recessing for 5 minutes. Okay, so can I have a motion to have a 5-minute recess for visiting the faculty,
So moved.
facilities? Thank you, Mr.
Second.
Bogdansky, second by Ms. Mariani.
Mr. Bogdansky?
Yes.
Mr. DeLate?
Yes.
Ms. Emilo?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Mariani?
Yes.
Ms. Anch?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, okay, so it's 10:41. Let's do our best to get back here at 10:46. Thank you so much. at 9:30.
Really?
Like, I'm not gonna make it. I took a water pill before I left. That was a mistake.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that'll do it.
I usually take them in the morning.
Hmm.
Mine was a little swollen. Sometimes it happens. I don't know why. Do we have everybody back yet? Kim?
Oh, that was loud. Sorry about that. Oopsie.
Okay, I think everyone is back. I have a motion to, do I need a motion to reconvene, Ms. Zeno?
Yes.
I don't think I do. Do I need a motion to reopen? No. Okay, so let's continue on. We now are up to board discussion on, I guess, the agenda items. Anyone have any questions?
Ms. Sullivan, can I be recognized?
Yes, Ms. Anch.
At one of my first New Jersey School Board conferences, I listened as Mr. Delicio, the Bergen County Superintendent, encouraged all school boards to focus on student achievement in 2023. We're now halfway through 2023, and according to the results of the NJGPA, at least 23% of our rising seniors are not graduation ready. Yes, our district scores are much higher than the state average, but that's not good enough. Aren't we supposed to be a lighthouse district? Do you think that the students who did not pass really care if our district fared better than the state? No, they don't. What they care about is how they are going to be able to graduate and who is going to help them get there. I feel that our main focus should be on student achievement and helping all of our students be graduation ready. As such, I cannot support the Care Solace and the 2 Thrive initiatives on tonight's agenda. These types of programs actually remove parents to some degree in being involved in and supervising their children's mental health. This is overreach, and I feel that we are becoming a psychiatric institution at this point. The costs are also concerning. For the 3 Thrive clinicians, the contract shows $370,000 per year. It's actually for 10 months, not a full year. The cost of the Thrive training is $60,000, and the cost of Care Solace is approximately $8,000 for a grand total of $440,000. The contract with Thrive states that the board is obligated to provide space and furnishing needs for a classroom and a separate clinical office, access to a computer, and the school's student information system and phone service. I see 18 committed purchase orders in June totaling $114,000 that are all described as either wellness center furnishings or wellness non-instruction. So I'm wondering if those are related to the board's obligations under the Thrive contract. If so, the grand total is then $554,000. That's over $500,000. I was in a meeting recently and the discussion turned to adequacy. The definition of adequacy includes a thorough and efficient education. So if we're not efficient in getting our students educated enough to be graduation ready, then we need to spend more time and resources on educating our students. I support mental health the same way I support the whole health of our students, and that is that parents are more appropriately suited to guide and support their children's mental health. Parents are responsible for their children's whole health, and it needs to stay that way. We are not the parents. We are a school district, and we need to stay focused on our priority here, which is that the purpose of our schools is to educate our children. It's the cornerstone of what we do and the reason we're all here in the first place. Last but not least, I'd like to welcome Ms. Dora Zeno to the district. Thank you for all the help you've given the board in the very short time you've been here. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to be heard?
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, Ms. King?
So, Ms. Anch, if I'm hearing you correct, you're stating that you're going to vote no to a program that is going to help our students should they be in crisis and need the assistance of a mental health care professional. And I'm thinking that that's tantamount to some of the things that they've instituted in districts that have
lower economic status than we are lucky enough to have here in the RIH district, where they bring students in and give them breakfast because they do not have adequate supply or monetary means to feed their child 3 square meals a day, and no student can learn on an empty stomach. So I'm struggling to understand why we would want to vote no to something that would provide help to our students in crisis. Not every student feels comfortable going to their parent and asking for help. A lot of times students look to the teacher that has reached them in class. I'm a little shocked by this, I have to be honest. Our district is working on the whole student, the wellness of the child, and I think it's incredibly important that we support this program that our superintendent and our administration have vetted and have made the recommendation that we move forward with it. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard?
Ms. Sullivan, if I could respond?
Oh, sure, sorry.
A student also cannot learn if they don't go to the dentist and they have a toothache. Have you ever had a toothache? Can you sit through a class and learn? No. There's plenty of people without dental insurance, myself included. I'm lucky enough to be able to afford to take my kids to the dentist. But what if someone can't? Are we offering dental care? What else are we going to offer? If somebody has migraines, are we going to have a neurologist in here? At some point, enough is enough. We are a school district. We educate our students. 23% of our rising seniors are not graduation ready. That is my concern, and I'm entitled to feel that way. Thank you.
Thank you so
Ms.
much.
Sullivan,
Yes.
if I may, thank you. Students aren't going to commit suicide because they have a toothache. I don't have dental insurance either. But the fact of the matter is that maybe the students aren't doing well because they're afraid to ask for help. We are in a crisis situation with our students right now. It's all over the news. It's in the statistics. There is an epidemic of depression amongst high school students. It's important for us to treat the whole child. They learn better when they're mentally prepared. And yes, you have a right to your vote. I'm just shocked by it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Anyone
you for your
else
opinion.
wish to be heard?
Could I say something, Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, sorry.
No, it's okay. There's not too much mental health. There's no such thing as too much mental health. There's no such thing as too much inclusivity or too much equity. These are all things that add to the whole child. And the experience that Dr. Dionisio is describing is you can only teach someone if they're mentally healthy. If there was a diabetic student who needed insulin, they would go to the nurse and get insulin. These students are crying for help. And I'm with Ms. King. I'm shocked that we aren't being more empathetic to recognize how much of a benefit this may provide for our students.
Thank you so much. Anyone else?
Ms. Sullivan, may I
Yes.
be recognized?
Mhm.
I have a question regarding ESIP.
Yes.
I think we're 1.3 million over budget. I think there was a decision made to scale back on the project. So I guess my first question would be, if we're scaling back on the project, how does that affect the return on our investment? What would it cost the district to get the project back to its original state? And I guess at the end of the day, we're looking at a 15-year return on our investment. So I think we should be investigating all avenues to ensure that if we're doing this project, we do it 100% correct. But I just like to get some knowledge as to how we could proceed and make sure we're proceeding in the correct manner. So that will fulfill the obligations that we were promised. Thank you.
Okay, you want to answer that?
Yes.
Sure.
If I forget parts, I'll just ask you to repeat, please. Because I didn't, after our finance committee meeting and facilities, I did reach out to the company and asked what we could do about the original bid. Because I think we discussed, can we take the original bid that we've already rejected, and the answer was no. So then I considered and I asked whether we could amend the new bids that just came in last week. And as soon as I asked the question, I realized that you could only do a change order for 20% of the bid amount. So that we cannot proceed with. To answer your question about the efficiency, I can't grasp this one, but for some reason when they rearranged the array of the solar panels, they came out with a higher efficiency rating. If you ask me the technical part of that, I don't know the answer, but that was the answer that I got, that we will actually be able to place more solar panels on the footprint than originally anticipated, so that's what we are facing. They are also guaranteeing, they being the vendor, is also guaranteeing us a 15-year warranty on the entire original surface, even though we're not resurfacing the entire thing, we're just repairing pockets of the roofing. I hope I've answered some of your questions, but I'm on a steep learning curve like you are.
Well, first, I want to thank you for joining us. This is your first public meeting.
Yes.
So I hit you with a really hard question. So you did very well. I know it's a complicated process, and I just hope that this project really assists the district in the long run. So thank you. I think you answered my question. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the ESIP as well. So you had provided, right before the board meeting, the answer to the questions on some of the issues that I had raised with the previous business administrator. There were some maps and charts. Fortunately, I was driving home from work, so I wasn't able to read and digest everything. What is going to happen to the wet spots then? Are they going to do those now or not do those? You said that the warranty will still cover even for those areas that we are not pocket repairing, but what will happen with those wet spots? Do you know?
And you didn't ask this question, but the most important thing that we learned at the last committee meeting was that why didn't we do the infrared exam ahead of time? Because it's what I would have done, but you know, it's what we have today. So it wasn't done until after the fact. That should have been done earlier. It would have restructured the entire financing mechanism and the budget of what we have. Now I forgot your question.
So, yes, I agree. I was here last year, and I don't understand why an $8,000 infrared study wasn't done last year, or at least presented to the board as an option. And now we went over budget, so you had to rebid it. By the way, the link on the website for the rebid is broken. And I know you had put some material. I read the entire board packet, but I wasn't really able to digest your email. But in any event, so what will happen to those wet spots? You said that the warranty will cover whether or not we repair the pockets, but what will happen to the wet spots? Are we going to do anything about those?
Yes,
or?
I do know the answer to that.
Okay.
The answer to that is that they will focus, the vendor, will focus on repairing all of the wet spots that you can't see on the surface but exist underneath. And they'll, instead of doing the entire area, they'll just do those pockets, meaning they'll take out the wet insulation and replace it with good insulation and then recover that area. And
So
that's what will maintain the 15-year warranty.
Okay, so we are going to repair the wet spots as a result
Yes.
of the infrared survey?
Yes.
Okay. The other question I had about the ESIP too, just in order to avoid this exercise where, we're ratifying payments in reverse, is there any way that we can actually see a report in the finance package on a monthly basis where we can see the amounts that are in the escrow account that's being held I don't know who's holding that. I don't know if a bank is holding that, perhaps a law firm's holding that. And a report as to the contemporaneous withdrawal of that money as it goes along, rather than getting it on an agenda and then us scrambling to try to understand what happened, since January. Is there any way that you could consider looking into that?
As it turns out, that report already exists, and I could share that with you, with the board, whenever we do next
Excellent, yeah.
distribution.
That would be wonderful, okay. Because we hadn't been getting that, so unless the superintendent has an objection. Would that be, did you have an objection?
No, Ms. Zeno said she already has that available, so that's fine.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, Ms. King?
So F2, check number 57419, that's the Bush Law Group payment of over $69,000. Do we know which bill that's for?
Don't know.
When I was able to get into the software program while we were sitting here before, and that relates to payments due prior to the receipt of the June bill. It is not the one we just received.
It is not for the June bill?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, so then we're going to move on to the minutes, I believe. Need a motion, unless anybody has comments at the minutes. Let me just remind everybody. No? Yes. So can I have a motion to approve the closed and regular public meeting minutes of June 12, 2023?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdansky. I have a second.
Second.
Ms. Anch, thank you.
Mr. Bogdansky.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate.
Yes.
Ms. Emilo.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Ms. Anch.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes. All right, that brings us to the motion. I need a motion to approve the closed and regular public meeting minutes of June 29, 2023.
So moved.
Mr. Bogdansky, thank you.
Second.
Ms. Anch, thank you.
Mr. Bogdansky.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate.
Yes.
Ms. Emilo.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Ms. Anch.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes. All right. I'd like to call for a motion to have a consent agenda to vote on P1 through P26, E1 through E16.
Excuse me, Ms. Anch. Ms. Sullivan.
Oh, yes.
What about the meeting minutes for June 12th?
I think we just did those, didn't we?
I thought we did the 29th.
Did 12
Oh, did
first.
you say the 12th and the 29th?
I think we did 12 and 29.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the
Okay.
12th. Okay,
All
sorry.
So I need a motion to have a consent agenda to vote on P1 through P26, E1 through E16, OP1 through OP8, and F1 through F9, and PO1 and PO2. This is
So
just a
moved.
move for the consent agenda.
So moved.
Mr. Bogdansky, thank you. Have a second?
Second.
Dr. Lorenz, thank you.
Mr. Bogdansky.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate.
Yes.
Ms. Emilo.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Ms. Anch.
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes. Okay, and then I need a motion to actually vote on the substantive provisions of P1 through P26, E1 through E16, OP1 through OP8, F1 through F9, and P01 to P02. Anybody want to make that motion for
So
me?
moved.
Mr. Bogdansky, thank you.
Second.
Ms. Mariani, thank you.
Mr. Bogdansky.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate.
Yes.
Ms. Emilo.
Yes.
Ms. King.
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz.
Yes.
Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Ms. Anch.
Yeah. Are we voting on them?
We're voting on the substantive portion of these agenda items.
Okay.
Oh, wait, I thought,
No.
we're just voting on, like,
Not the consent agenda. This is actually the substantive vote for these items.
So
Did
we're
you want to
voting on
change your
what we're
vote?
putting into the consent agenda.
No,
Or are we
did that
voting?
We're
already.
voting on the agenda, the whole agenda, all the
Yes.
items.
We already voted on the consent agenda.
Yeah. So did you need to change your vote?
Okay, thank you so much,
You're
Ms. King.
welcome.
I do, I'm sorry, I just
Okay, that's
misunderstood.
okay. We're
Don't
still
we need
doing
to
the-
vote once the votes are taken? Isn't it, don't we need to now have a vote in order for them to change their votes?
No, because we're still doing roll call.
So is this roll call or it's voting?
It's
Sorry.
voting. It's voting on, you can change your vote, Miss Emila.
On the complete agenda.
On the complete agenda, yes.
Okay, sorry.
It's okay.
I
We
had
want to
it
have a
right now.
fully informed vote here.
Okay, so, yes to everything except E7, E8, and E11.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
E7, E8, and E11.
Okay.
I
Did anyone
forgot where
else-
we left off. Where were we, Ms. Demetrio?
Did anyone else need to change their vote? I left off with Miss Mariani.
Does anyone else need to change their vote?
Okay. Miss Anch?
Oh, wait, I didn't go, did I?
No, no, she's actually calling on people for the first time. She didn't get to you yet.
Okay.
You didn't vote yet.
Miss Anch?
Right.
Miss Anch
Yes,
did not.
she's voting for the
Okay,
first time.
I thought we were going in the.
No, 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 it's
Never
okay.
mind.
No, she did not.
Okay, so yes to all, but no to E7, no to E8, no to E11, yes to F1, but abstain to PO number 23-06151 for $67.38. Yes to P5, but abstain to P5C.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Miss Sullivan?
I think Miss Mariani goes next.
I did Miss Mariani. She said yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I thought she thought. I was confused, just
Okay.
like Ms.
You
Emilo.
wanna-
I'm sorry, then I need to correct that because I thought we were just voting
On the consent agenda?
yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I am yes to everything except E7, E8, and E11. Those are no's.
Miss Sullivan?
Yes to everything except for E7, E8, and E11.
Okay. So,
You okay, Miss Demetrio?
yep.
Okay. All right, that brings us to, just a minute, let me get there. I think we have another public comment. Yes, we have another public comment, so I can have a motion to reopen for public comment.
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Anch. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Mariani.
Yes.
Mr. DeLate?
Yes.
Miss Emilo?
Yes.
Miss King?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Miss Mariani?
Yes.
Miss Anch?
Yes.
Miss Sullivan?
Yes. All right, anyone else wish to speak?
Audrey Souders, Oakland. I wanted to comment on E7, E8, and E11. Can you, first of all, I have privacy concerns about children using the school to provide mental health services. With these partnerships, are these mental health services being reported back to the school? And what information is the school able to gather from the information? And it's a two-way street, and I find that extremely concerning, particularly when you're talking about mental health and a student's privacy and HIPAA violations. I would like to know if over $100,000 was spent on furniture for the wellness room, which if it was, but again, I'd like to know, where is this room? Where is this room located? Are people, other students walking by this room and knowing what's happening in the newly well-furnished room so that their privacy is they're going to know what's happening. Like if you're getting a math tutor in the math tutor class, are you going to walk by this room and know that this student's getting mental health services? I mean, how are you ensuring a student's privacy to take advantage of these services? I'd like to know what we are going to do when the IDEA grant and the ESSER funds runs out. When do we need to use our ESSER fund money up by? At what point? Is it next 2024? I'm not certain. And I'd like to know, when you say that the students are in crisis, I'd like to know if you can define that in a manner that I can understand. That have there been 25 students looking for mental health services and they haven't been able to be provided? Like I want to know what that means in a more concrete fashion. I wanted to add online financial literacy class. This is going to seem funny, maybe, but if you really think about this, and we're talking about mental health, and we're talking about young, impressionable children, particularly female students who are inundated with image and things on social media. This is what was in Chapter 1 of Online Financial Literacy this summer. Millions of animals are slaughtered daily for food. Some products contain animal byproducts. The manufacturers perform painful tests on animals to make their products. You can decide to purchase cruelty-free products and commit to consuming less meat or no meat at all.
Ms. Souders, I'm
Question.
so sorry. Your time is up.
Question. How can consumers use their
Miss-
spending power
Miss
to prevent
Miss Souders.
cruelty to animals?
Um,
They can
Miss Souders.
eat less meat.
I think you're out of time.
I understand.
You can return if no one else wishes
Okay.
to speak per board policy and finish your comment. And we still have time in the 30-minute period. I'm sorry.
Hi, Michelle Clancy, resident of Oakland, special education teacher, Indian Hills High School. I am not speaking on behalf of the Ramapo Indian Hills Education Association. About 10 years ago, probably 13 now, the Thrive program at Indian Hills began. I am the head teacher in the Thrive program, and it's upsetting to hear about the students' mental health, and without giving away confidentiality, there are about 20 students in the program who are associated with a Thrive counselor, and it's not open where anyone can see. They go see the counselor when needed. They come to the classroom and I teach them in the classroom. So I don't understand why E7, E8, and E11 was voted down. 13 years this program has been at Indian Hills and has helped all of these children without sending them out of district. These children in my program used to go out of district. We saved the district a lot of money with the Thrive program. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to speak?
Elliot Bannon, Wyckoff. I'll make it quick. I have 3 questions, 2 for Dr. Dionisi. I'm not trying to pick on you, honestly. It's just you're the only one that can answer them. So give me the first 2, which is, first of all, thank you for defining the culture. But I still don't understand why we needed the shift. Were we not welcoming to all of our students? I guess I'm asking, why are you calling it a shift? I think that's really what kind of got most of us. The second question for you is, you didn't answer the questions about the 16-19 project, so I hope you'll just take a few minutes to do that. And then finally, which the question that I ran out of time the first time, but I'll ask, which is, if a teacher teaches something That's considered controversial, whether it's gender theory, talking about pronouns, things that are theories. They're not settled, and they're very controversial. What do you, the board, this is for everybody, I guess, do you have a plan? I would suggest you say, look, I don't think it's a good idea to tell anybody not to teach anything, but you can say, listen, if you teach these things because they're controversial, then you are required to teach the other side simply because they're opinions. And your job as a teacher is to foment discussion, right? So that's how I would do it. But I guess I'm asking you, if we know, they said, the history teacher said, we're going to be teaching the 1619 project, or parts of it, right? What are you going to say to her when we say, hey, look, there's a ton of experts in the area that have a lot of issues that are very legitimate, and shouldn't those be presented as well and let the students make their own decisions? So what are you guys going to do about it? Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Philomena LaForge, Oakland. Vivian Newton King announced her re-election last week, but she dropped her middle name, Udens. I wondered if this is because the Udens Appliance brought a lawsuit against 4 Flow parents because they raised questions about the RIH vendor, your parents who employ you. Your tagline is United for Students, but are you really? While you were chair of the policy committee in 2022, you changed the policy to only allow agenda items, and then you made the dance and the girls lacrosse team wait until the late hours of the second public session to be heard. Then you invite Oakland residents to email you because you want to hear from them. That is so laughable and sad. You haven't been listening to anybody for 3 years. Your track record includes not adding more time to the public session, not allowing parents to speak on curriculum. You told parents on a Facebook post that I'm not sure what parents should control what is taught in schools because they are not our kids originated. And then you went and informed them, like they didn't know, that parents can then send them to a hand-selected private school because we are a wealthy district. Mrs. King, you use words like transparency and statements like being engaged. It is apparent that you lack self-awareness. You are non-transparent. In fact, if you were transparent, the district wouldn't be spending over $25,000 because you can't answer a simple question like, why was your name appeared in the Indian Hills commencement brochures in perpetuity with special honor of awarding the diploma in 2021? That's transparency, and you don't care. Well, I think you are all kinds of wrong for this district, the board, the town, and I am launching my own Not Vivian Newton King campaign so people know that, and I can expose you for all the lies you have made up there and all the hypocrisy that you sit there. Go ahead, Ms. King, laugh it up. I hope we had a close-up of your face, because everything is funny to you. And Mr. Dr. Lorenz, yes, there is such a thing as over mental health. There absolutely is. And I wish you guys would actually opine on what you think that website actually does, because I bet you guys didn't even go to that website and check it out. Why don't you sign up for it and see what it really does? And Dr. Denisio, so incredibly disappointed with you tonight.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to speak?
Joel Anch, Franklin Lakes. This is my opinion, does not reflect the opinion of Franklin Lakes Town Council. Curious about the disparity between Hills and Ramapo. As a parent, even before Dr. Dionisio got here, there was a disparity between these schools And I would assume this was a big issue for a long time and should have been brought up to him at the time of his employment. I can't imagine it wasn't. Now in the strategic plan, that's going to be addressed in June of 2024 in Initiative 4.4, and that's just to examine the enrollment disparity, nothing more. Dr. Lorenz wrote a whole analysis on Facebook with his views on this. Whatever happened to that? I haven't seen or heard anything. The whole ice hockey issue emanated from this disparity. That affected a lot of parents, coaches, and students, many of which came to meetings to express their feelings about the same. Vivian Newton King's family abandoned Hills for Ramapo, an Oakland resident, so her son could be on the ice hockey team there. I don't see her doing anything about the disparity either, as she is also on the athletics committee, part of the problem. This is something the superintendent should have addressed immediately upon his employment, not 2.5 years later. Vivian King also voted to reinstate a teacher who gave my daughter an illegal survey and made 2 boys read scenes about masturbation in front of the class and sexualized my daughter. And I'll remind everybody, that's the only reason I ever got involved here. Period. I wouldn't even been here if that didn't happen. You voted to reinstate that teacher. Sure glad you're proud of yourself. I find it pretty ironic that Ms. Koulakordis was going to come chime in, zoom in, when she was the one that voted against in-person meetings. It'd be nice if she believed what she voted for, when people were maybe worried about listening if they were in their car, and that's why she voted against it. And when it was a 7-2 majority, the other way around, there was always 1 or 2 people that were absent and missed meetings constantly, all the time. I don't ever see that happening anymore either. Thanks, Dr. Denisio, for telling us how safe the students should be and how this is all going to make everybody feel safe. Well, how about trying to get some security in the building? Last year, there was a credible threat that the school had, was brushed under the carpet. No one said anything. Some students never came to school. Others left early. No one even addressed it. I don't really think that's making anybody feel safe. And if there's security in here, it's not just for students. It's for faculty, it's for teachers, and for staff, and everybody else alike. And thanks, Dr. Lorenz, professor of CRT at Ramapo, for telling us how there can never be too much inclusivity, diversity, or DEI. I really appreciate that too.
Thank you so much.
Kathy Schwartz, Franklin Lakes. I'm actually a little bit sick to my stomach right now with what's happening. I can't believe that you don't feel that the mental health of our students is worth spending money on. I had written a few points to talk about legal fees tonight, and I know I sound like a broken record, but let's just look back at what we do spend money on. The cost for our general counsel in 2022 for an entire year of legal services was $114,000, 1 whole year. The bill from Bush Law for 4.5 months was over $158,000, $158,000 for 4.5 months versus $113,000 for a full year. That brings our total cost for general counsel services for this fiscal year to $271,000. I think by my calculation that is a 137% increase in legal fees. And that's just for legal counsel, regular legal counsel. That doesn't include all the ethics charges, that doesn't include lots of other things that are out there. I'm shocked that you think it's okay to spend money on that, and you think it's okay to spend money on PR firms and communications services, and you don't think it's okay to spend money on the mental health of our students. Thank you.
Carol Eng from Wyckoff. I'd like to finish what I started earlier on. In the past 3 years, Vivian Newton King's actions and behavior do not reflect a prioritization of students' welfare. She did not volunteer herself in serving on the education committee, where she could have had a more direct impact on student experiences. Instead, she chose to chair the policies committee, where her priority was in suppressing public comments making students wait for hours to be heard, raising questions about her consideration for student participants. Her focus seems to be on her own elevation, causing obstacles for board initiatives and using her family business to sue parents of students who asked questions. How is her behavior and actions benefiting students in any meaningful way? As vice president of the board and chair of the policy committee, she had ample opportunities to make a positive difference for students. She had the power, the control, and majority vote. She could have demonstrated initiative, intelligence, and creativity in promoting, advocating, and protecting our students, but she chose not to. Let's face it, Vivian Uden-King is not interested in students. Her track record shows it. Her voting record shows it. And her behavior on the board shows it. Forget the rhetoric and the campaign speeches. They mean nothing. Action speaks louder than words, and her action speaks volumes. Students have been left behind. And in her own words, elections has consequences. We have seen it. She has done nothing to benefit students during her time on the board. Oakland residents, vote no to Vivian King in November.
Thank you so much.
Karen Nash, Franklin Lakes. This is always a little high for me. I don't think anyone here is saying mental health of the children that go to school here is not important. I think what we're saying is that it's not your business. It's for families to decide that. Maybe some people don't, maybe some of the kids don't have that advantage of being able to go to their mom or dad. But in that case, why don't you pull that student aside and ask them, or bring in the parent and make it a family thing still? I don't understand why you're taking it upon yourself to try to get the mental health of that child to have that. What I'm trying to say is it's just really not your business. They come to school to learn so they can go to college and move on, not to have you judge them or judge what they should be doing to acquire mental health. Why do you have anything to do with it? I don't understand. I went here, as I tell you all the time, we didn't have that in place, and we're all doing just fine. The world is still as hard then as it is now. The reason that our children are in crisis is because we're allowing our children to be in crisis. They don't have any identity. We just went through COVID. Things are being forced down their throat. It's really not for the people here in this building to decide whether or not a child is mentally healthy or not. It's not for you. It's for families. It's for doctors that are out there that are accessible. I worked for Christian Healthcare for 5 years. There's a place there you can just walk in if you'd like to for the children's mental health that goes from age 2 to 92. Why wouldn't you use that instead of somebody here in this school? I would like an answer to that. I still haven't gotten one. I don't really know why you're taking it upon yourselves to decide what children need mental help with mental health. I don't even know how you identify them. How are you identifying them and pulling them in to these programs? I don't understand. I would like somebody to please explain that to me at some point. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we're getting close to the 30 minutes, so.
Margaret Bennett,
if this
Franklin
is-
Lakes.
I'm sorry, could I just finish, Mrs. Bennett? If the board wants to hear anybody else, we would have to make a motion to extend the time, so. Unless you have a number different, are we over yet? So we still have a few more minutes?
10 minutes.
Okay, great, thank you so much.
Nice try, Judy. Margaret Bennett, Franklin Lakes.
I wasn't trying anything.
Margaret Bennett, Franklin Lakes. Dr. Dionisio, I have several questions. First, I want to make sure that I understand what just happened here tonight. It's a 4-4 vote, so it didn't pass. Is that correct? That was my count. Thank you, Ms. Zeno. Wow. Dr. Dionisio, I don't know how you can respond to the level of ignorance that is in this room right now, but please try and go on the record for us as to what this actually means for these programs that have been in place and for the children that they serve and the need for this. I mean, I'm literally going to cry at what just happened here tonight, and I can't imagine how you're feeling and the phone calls you have to make in the morning to scramble to try and figure out how you're going to make up the gap for these programs. And I challenge this board to find any school district where a board has done this, where a board has just stripped these critical programs that have been in place for years to serve the students who, yes, are in crisis, that it does actually exist. More ignorance. Doreen Mariani, you can read all you want from that website. It does not change the laws. You and other board members went out without the superintendent and decided to hire somebody. You're not allowed to do that. You have a board council. I keep hearing, oh, our board council suggested this. Well, you have a new board council. I've had very limited experience with her, and I am pretty confident that she will tell you you're wrong. I'm not a legal counsel, but I know the administrative codes that are in place that protect our school districts from people like you to spend money, to run the school districts, to usurp the tasks of the superintendent. And thank you, Dr. Dionisio. If you could please give a detailed analysis of what the result of this vote will mean for those kids.
Thank you so much. I wasn't trying to cut you off, Mrs. Bennett. I was just checking the time.
My name is Mary Ann Kopp. I am a teacher here at Indian Hills, and I am speaking on behalf of myself and not as a executive member of the Ramapo Indian Hills Education Association. I wanted to get up to continue with what Michelle Clancy said, because I also teach in the Thrive program. Michelle is the head teacher. I am one of the off-period teachers, as you could put it. I'm also a special ed teacher here in the district, and I'm disheartened by what I'm hearing from what happened up on the stage, by what also parents are saying. We don't allow kids to show up and have counseling without parent approval. We don't let things happen willy-nilly. Our kids are in crisis. It's been happening for years. I've been a teacher for 17 years. I've watched things happen. I've taught here. I've taught in other districts. It's what's happening. And if we don't embrace it and see what's coming down the pike, things are going to happen that are not going to be pretty. And the fact that we are saying that we need to allow just the parents, and yes, parents need to give approval. We don't just allow these things to happen. We need to, I don't even know where I'm going with this. I'm just so disheartened at this point. But we need to really think hard about the decisions we're making and what we're doing for our children. Reading, writing, math, social studies, science are extremely important, but so is the mental health of our students. I have children, and I worry about their mental health every day, and we have to worry about the mental health of every student in this building also. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else wish to speak?
Audrey Souders, Oakland. I didn't finish. Online financial literacy. How can, I want to give you the answer. Here's the question. How can consumers use their spending power to prevent cruelty to animals? The answer is eat less meat. That's the question in financial literacy. Now, you're kind of like, why are you even wasting your time talking about this? But you have a 15-year-old impressionable young girl, perhaps, who has some type of image issue and starts thinking that if she eats something, meat, steak, whatever, she's being cruel to animals, and this is what you're providing in our financial literacy class. This is the kind of stuff that leads to mental health issues.
Any other person wish to speak? All right. Can I have a motion to close public comment?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Bogdansky?
Yes.
Mr. DeLate?
Yes.
Ms. Emilo?
Yes.
Ms. King?
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz?
Yes.
Ms. Mariani?
Yes.
Ms. Anch?
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes. All right, anyone have any board comments? It is 11:37 p.m. I'd like to try to end this meeting before midnight.
Ms. Sullivan, I have comments.
Oh, so sorry.
I want to respond to the public.
Oh, yes, of
Thank you.
course. Mhm.
So, there were some questions regarding culture shift. I believe I already answered that in regards to mission, vision, core values, and beliefs. Should you have any questions regarding the 1619 project or any questions related to that, I encourage you to contact Ms. McDermott directly, and you could speak to her. And I'll just say that our teaching is defined by the curriculum that we have in alignment with our state standards, and the curriculum that we develop and implement is age appropriate and it's fair and balanced. What I'll also share is, in response to the majority of the conversation around mental health this evening and the work that the district has been doing for quite some time. The resolution this evening, E7, E8, and E11 did not pass. It was 4-4. So absent a majority, it did not pass. I will also share that this is the first time as a superintendent that I had any indication that those resolutions would not pass, even out of conversations in the committees that we've had. As I shared earlier, anytime we have partnerships with mental health professionals, with families, there are confidentiality agreements that are in place. There are signed releases that parents have to provide. Parents willingly participate and partner with the school district and with resources outside of the school in order to provide the necessary supports for their children. We have well-intentioned and caring parents, and we have the same with our faculty and staff and our counselors and administrators. But we do have families that need help. We do have families that need guidance. We do have families that need direction because they don't know where to go, and they don't know what to do. And yes, we have kids and we have families that are in crisis. And I lean on the counselors, the teachers, the child study team members, the administrators, who are the ones who are actually interfacing directly with these families, confidentially, to support them, to meet their needs. Kids and families that are crying for help, that whether we like it or not is going to impact learning in our classrooms and in our schools. And they're kids who are sitting next to your kids. And sometimes they are our kids. They're all our kids. When I realized that this resolution wasn't going to pass this evening, and I'm speaking about E7, this program has been in effect for over 10 years. I also went and looked in my files, and the 3 counselors that serve our students are serving over 50 students over the course of the year. That's a lot of kids. The challenge we have now in front of us is that school starts in about 6 weeks. And my concern is that we're going to have these families who are now going to be wondering what's going to happen in September. My concern, and I need to clearly communicate this to the board, is that there are a number of different layers here that I am gravely concerned about. Number one is addressing the social, emotional, mental needs of these kids, of our children here in our schools each and every day. Secondly, this is going to not only have an impact on their learning, but it's going to have an impact on other children in our schools as well. Third, there has been a great deal of concern that I've heard over the years around out-of-district placements for special education and what are we doing to keep kids in the district. Well, I can tell you the quickest way in order to make sure that you're going to increase your out-of-district placements is going to be to not provide this program. We're actually moving backwards. And I don't have to tell you what the financial implications are going to be on all of those decisions, which not only robs our special education students and our students who need the counseling supports, but it also robs of our financial resources to provide general education resources and all other kinds of needs for our school district. I recognize that for some people who are not intimately involved with this type of work, that it may be hard to understand what the schools and the services are that we're actually providing. And it is amazing that we have so many families that are fortunate enough to not have a need for these types of services. But I can tell you that the number is a lot larger than you think it is. And I cannot underscore enough as to how significantly concerned I am as your superintendent of schools that we're in this situation, and we are going to now have to respond to these parents and their concern as to what we're going to be able to provide and what we're going to be able to do in September. Thank you.
Okay, now we move to board comments. Anyone wish to be heard?
I'd
Dr.
just like to make a comment.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a student in this district, after what just happened, I don't feel included. That's the inclusivity part. I don't feel equal. That's the equity part. Really cannot believe what just happened. I said when I was running, we need not worry about this is Dr. King. We need not worry only about the vitriolic words of the bad people, but the appalling silence of the good people. This community needs to pay attention to what just happened and what Dr. Dionisio just said. Really disappointed.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to share one more thing. In a review of what the district is actually paying for, I want to just go over E7, E8, and E11 for the board. So I already talked about E11. That's the Care Solace opportunity that existed before the board. So that was not passed this evening. So that's an opportunity. So if a family is in crisis or having difficulty with a service provider, in trying to get counseling services for their child outside of school and navigating the health insurance, or if they don't have health insurance, Care Solace helps provide them with mental health providers and substance use providers in order to get services for those children. That's 100% selected by the parents to participate in. The school district is not requiring parents. It's just an additional opportunity and a service to help them meet the needs of their children. Right? So parents, the adults, are the ones making the decisions for their kids. So that did not pass tonight. E8 is the Sage Thrive partnership. This is the training and certification and coaching program in order to be able to expand and build capacity with our existing talented faculty and staff, our counselors and child study team members. This is what we discussed in our Education and Personnel Committee in order to be able to scale in a cost-effective manner, essentially mental health support, training more people that we currently have on staff. Be efficient with our dollars in order to leverage that so we have more people reaching out to our kids. That did not pass tonight. And E7 is the counseling program through Sage that we've had for over 10 years. And this was that shift as well with Care Plus, where we reallocated. We actually saved some more money by doing that. That cost was $370,000. It is realistic that we could potentially lose, and that number will be double based on the number of students who are currently in the program. It is not unfathomable that we can have 5 to 8 students go out of district, and out-of-district placements will run the Board of Education approximately $100,000 a student with transportation. So those are some additional impacts that I want the board to understand. And I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Anybody else?
Ms. Sullivan, may I be heard?
Sure.
In the event, because the next board meeting is not until August 28th, in the event that anyone would like to reconsider tonight's vote, it could only be reintroduced by a member during a tie who voted no. That's
It
just
can what?
informational.
I didn't hear what you said. It could only be reintroduced what?
In the event the board would like to reintroduce tonight's vote,
Mm-hmm.
in order to do so, because your next board meeting is not until August 28th,
Yes.
a member of the board who voted no would have to reintroduce it. And then you could take action this evening if you desire.
And it could be the case that the committee could meet again and reformulate the proposal. Could it not? Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I have a question about that. Are you saying that someone who voted no right now could reintroduce it this evening? She's saying this evening.
Yes, I am.
Not waiting
I'm aware.
until the
I'm aware.
24th of August.
So I wanted to respond to some things Dr. Dionisio said. So you were aware that there were questions about this matter, and I believe I informed you by email that I had some significant concerns about this, which I also expressed at the committee level. So it's not the first time that my questions or anyone else's questions were raised. I wasn't planning on doing this, but since there seems to be a lot of criticism about a person's votes, I'd like to explain my vote. So for the Care Solace, I'll start small. The Care Solace contract, it's a startup company, and it was not described in the Education Committee that they serve, I forget how many hundred people, somebody said here that they serve. And I actually asked a lot of questions about this. The first time it came before the committee, had it been reviewed by council, and it had not. And so I asked if it could be reviewed by council at the last Education Committee meeting, because I was concerned about confidentiality and for students' privacy. That is the cornerstone of how mental health for students can be supported. And it hadn't been run by council, and that worried me, that something like this hadn't been run by council. So then it was ostensibly reviewed by council at the next meeting, but there was no report to the committee about exactly what council's concerns were, what their changes were, how they were going to address these issues. There was nothing. It was reviewed by council, and that was it. So I know I'm not allowed to call vendors, and I don't call vendors, except once. At the last meeting, I was authorized by council to call DCO because the $1.4 million proposal to have the board vote on it was placed on literally the agenda in its full entirety a day or two before the meeting, and nobody understood what was happening with respect to the proposal. But anyway, so I went online, I just typed in Care Solis, and I found the Cherry Hill School District is using them. So I said, okay, so there's two ways you can use them, anonymously or through something called something handoff. I can't remember what it is. Try this if you want to go anonymously. So I did. It's not anonymous. The first question is, what is your sex? I can't recall, but I think it said male, female, or binary. So I checked female. And then the next question was, what is the age of the student? So I said 14 years old. And then the next question was the race of what the student is. And there is a decline to answer. I checked decline to answer. And then I typed in, the student is looking for psychiatrists within 15 miles of Oakland who have suicidal ideation issues. And it came up with a list of providers. The first one had a little checkbox that said verified by Care Solis. And that was a major institution. I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was like Hackensack Hospital or Christian Healthcare. The next one was a retired doctor who's not practicing anymore. Now, the reason why I knew that was because I opened up a separate tab and checked. And the next one wasn't a psychiatrist, it was a psychologist. And the next one wasn't a psychiatrist, and it was a psychologist. And then I opened up, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it. You can add what insurance company you have. And I did. I put in my insurance company. And then I opened up a separate tab in the provider list, which is easily ascertainable from my insurance company website, as to how many providers you can ask for mental health supports. So I checked the names that they said took my insurance, and none of them were correct. And these are some of the questions that I raised in an email. These are the questions I raised at the committee level. How does this help? You're going to send a parent or a guardian to go to this website, and it's going to be worse than just picking up the phone and calling an insurance company. That is my vote. You can criticize it. You can say what you want about it. I didn't think it was something that was going to help parents or guardians, whether children were in crisis or not in crisis. Oh, and I forgot to mention, every time you typed in to see a doctor and pull up more information about on that list, there was a pop-up. Would you like us to make this appointment for you? Every single time. And you had to X out of that screen. So I just thought, this isn't really helpful. It's just creating more barriers for the students to get help. And I wasn't convinced, and I'm allowed not to be convinced in my vote, that this isn't something that's going to help parents, that's just going to send them off on another. It's basically looked like a Yellow Pages to me. And then the person who made the presentation at the committee made some representations which troubled me, and I've never gotten good examples for that. That you can pull up something called an impact report, so that who is using the service, I wasn't sure if it was anonymous or something that would be referred to by a guidance counselor, you can dig into the data. And then the school can make decisions about the resources that were coming from this data. And I thought, my goodness, is that really scientific? Is this based on how the firm demonstrated when I did the Google tab search? I thought, this just isn't for us. It's just not worth it. It's not worth the $10,000. It just seemed more confusing to me. So then we'll go to Thrive Alliance. The first time I saw the Thrive Alliance contract was on the agenda for the Education and Personnel Committee on Monday night. The meeting was the next day, and it was a heavy agenda. And I asked lots of questions about this. I didn't understand what the need was for the third counselor. There could have been a need. It wasn't demonstrated. It wasn't demonstrated with any kind of data. I wasn't told that there was a waiting list for students. I wasn't told that, that this clinician was somebody that we really needed to add this third clinician. I didn't have a problem really with the clinicians that were already here, but there was a third clinician that was going to be added that would be full-time here for 37.5 hours a week. So then I started looking around because I just didn't have the right guidance. I'm trying to see, well, do other school districts do this? How, it seems like a lot of clinicians, 3 clinicians, and I understand we were getting rid of Care Plus, but it just wasn't really made clear to me on the committee level what this person was doing. And then my biggest fear was realized when I found Thrive Alliance counselor testified against a family in a special education matter where the parents brought a heartbreaking case about their student in 4th or 5th grade who just couldn't get the IEP supports that they wanted. And I've heard this story before, over and over and over and over again. They gave the student a Thrive Alliance counselor. It didn't help. It made it worse and worse. This is the biggest problem I had. That Thrive Alliance counselor testified against the parents and the student in the due process case. Do you know how upside down that is? Do you know how horrible that is? How fearful? It's not one example. Go to the OAL website. Look how many people who are in a healthcare role testify against special education parents who are trying desperately to get IEP supports for their child.
Excuse me, Ms.
If
Sullivan.
the agreement would be something
Ms.
that would say
Sullivan,
something.
Ms. Sullivan, can we get back to what Ms. Zena was saying about whether or not, and I mean, I understand, you had a bad experience, but
I didn't have a bad experience. I'm not sure. I have the
expressing a
floor.
bad
You're not
experience,
recognized.
but
You're not recognized.
I'm never recognized when I'm making a point.
Because you
am I?
always
Point of
interrupt.
order.
recognized
Point of
when I'm not
order.
recognized.
Excuse me.
I'm
Point of
making a
order.
point of
Sullivan
Point of
is
order.
I was making
Ms.
a
Sullivan
point
was
of order.
speaking.
She's speaking.
I was making a point of order through
You are
her
out of
speaking.
order.
I'm not out
You
of
are
order.
out of
I'm
order.
making a point of order.
You are out of order.
I'm making a point of order.
You're not recognized.
I'm making a point
You're
of order.
interrupting another board
You don't have a right
member.
to not recognize a point of order.
What is your point of order?
My point of order is that you are going off topic. You are going on, and it's almost 12 o'clock, and I would like to stick to the point of this issue right now.
I'm speaking directly to the point.
No, you're not. You're going off on a tangent.
Your point of
talking
order
about
is
other
not
things.
recognized.
No, you're never recognized.
It never is, because you
Never.
don't like it when somebody gives their
Never.
own opinion.
No,
You just want to
it's-
have the floor.
That's not it.
Anyway,
You're completely
so what
off
I'm
on
saying
this.
is that there was the cornerstone of confidentiality and trust has to be unbreakable for mental health supports. It really does. So what student is going to go for these kinds of supports? I thought, maybe there are students who go. That wasn't demonstrated to us. I wasn't told that there were 20 students in the program. But I heartily support mental health, but it has to be done the right way. It has to be done with the student believing and feeling, and the parents and the guardians and this board feeling that those students can have confidence, that their trust will never be broken, that whatever they say to that counselor will never be revealed. And it's not just one experience. Go look at the due process cases on the OAL website. Have a look. So that was why I voted. Has nothing to do with disregard for mental health. How dare anyone say that any board member on this board doesn't care about the overall health of every single child in this district, including their own? That is ridiculous. This can be re-reviewed. It can be brought back up to the committee. It can be shared in a different way. It can be reformulated. And yes, we can do a motion now at midnight for a board member to change their mind, but I'm not changing my mind.
I have something to say now. So I had a really positive thing to say. It's basically just 3 sentences, short and sweet, talking about the RAHEA, talking about Dr. Dionisio bringing in, block scheduling, talking about how wonderful it's going to be next year to watch the strategic plan be implemented. And I'm just absolutely horrified by what just happened. How dare I not like what just happened? How dare I be offended by the fact that maybe my child will not have access to mental health if he needs it? How dare I? The fact of the matter is that you 4 have made decisions that affect the entire student body. You don't believe in it. You don't want your child to participate in it. don't. What about the child who needs it? What about the family who doesn't know where to turn? You didn't like what you read in the OAL? That doesn't mean that someone else didn't benefit from the Thrive program or didn't benefit from the mental health facility they chose to go to. I just heard person after person walk up to that podium and spew hate. I can take it, I'm an adult. But they also use terms about the LGBT community, about transgender people, about people who are in crisis. Just deal with it. What about the people who can't just deal with it? I'm absolutely mortified, horrified. I don't have enough adjectives to describe the disdain I feel right now for what just happened.
Anybody else wish to make a comment? It's very late.
I'd like to make a comment, Ms. Sullivan.
Mr. DeLate, yes, if you could just watch the time.
I find it highly ironic that the same people who were voting down mental wellness funding or defunding mental wellness for students are the same ones that are going out on a limb to find public relations firms to help sanitize decisions that are made on this board.
Wrong. Very wrong.
And I'd like to thank Ms. Mariani for quoting the advocacy trade group website, but I'm going to quote for you New Jersey Administrative Code 6A 23A-9.4, Section 14, which is actually the reason I had to make a phone call to begin with. And I'm sure the taxpayers of this district are probably grateful that I helped save $28,000 on extraneous services when we're defunding wellness programs. Section 14 reads, and this isn't an advocacy group, this is actually New Jersey code. Public relations services are incorporated into the duties of the superintendent, SBA, and or other staff positions, and are not provided by a dedicated public relations staff position or contracted service provider. So, I'd like to think about the fact that we not only saved money on their services, but probably saved additional legal fees on yet another ethics complaint, and likely thousands of dollars in legal fees that would have gone with that. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Sullivan,
Ms. Sullivan.
may I be recognized?
Yes, Mr. Bradansky, if just
in
mind
light
the
of
time.
Yep, in light of what just happened, and I'm extremely disappointed, I'd like to know what can be done for us to get back on track, to address any of your concerns, to get the Thrive program back on board to help save our students. I think we need to have that discussion, and I think it needs to move forward. Thank you.
You can call a committee meeting. Chairperson can call a committee meeting at any time.
And I shall tomorrow.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes, Ms. Mariani? Just mind the time.
I would like to address Mr. DeLate. The purpose of a communications firm has absolutely 100% nothing to do with the look of this board. That is absolutely untrue. Absolutely. It was never discussed for that reason. It was never brought to committees for that reason. And anyone on this board has the opportunity to look at the proposal. It says nothing about this board. That was not the purpose. So for people to keep saying that, it is so irritating because you don't know what you're talking about. Not just you personally, but since you just said it, I want to reiterate that that was not the point of a communications firm working with the RIH district. Not at all. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan, I just have one sentence to say, please. I'd like to give an opportunity to those of you who voted no. As Ms. Zeno pointed out, if you'd like to make a change and put it back on the agenda and vote on it again, this is your opportunity.
That was
to
already,
right
that was
the
already,
wrong.
that was already communicated.
I'm communicating it again. I don't need you to say that.
The anticipated future meeting dates are Monday, August 28, 2023. This will be the proposed curriculum changes, public hearing / regular public meeting, Ramapo High School auditorium. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdansky.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Ansch.
Mr. Bogdansky,
Yes.
Mr. DeLate,
Yes.
Ms. Emilo,
Yes.
Ms. King,
Yes.
Dr. Lorenz,
Yes.
Ms. Mariani,
Yes.
Ms. Ansch,
Yes.
Ms. Sullivan.
Yes, thank you. Good night.